He was reborn as a berserker, and he was on his way to prison. In this world, barbarians are fierce bastards who hunt monstrous creatures, yet he was being taken to prison by people who didn't even reach his waist. The truth is, this boy was reborn into a world where barbarians are berserkers who grow stronger by feeding on the blood of beasts. They would reach a point where they couldn't even recognize their own comrades. They were true berserkers, born only for destruction, and he ended up reincarnating into a body 100 times bigger than everyone else, with overwhelming strength. On a clear blue day, the story begins again in a different place. Down a road, a group of soldiers escort several chained prisoners. Hands chained, one of the prisoners walks the path in silence. Following the road, the entire group continues its long and slow journey. A man yells that he's innocent, that he only stole a ring. At that, one of the guards tells all the prisoners to shut up. After being reprimanded, they fall silent and continue walking down the road. The guard then remarks on how loud the trash is today. Approaching, another voice tells the officer he's truly innocent. Turning around, the guard asks the man who he thinks he is. He then says he never sold anything and that he was framed. Falling silent, the guard just stares at him, saying nothing. The man reflects that there's always someone who frames an innocent person. He continues, saying that a paladin is a paladin no matter their age. The guard then asks if he has the nerve to continue with that story. Staring at the man, the guard asks if he dares to doubt a paladin of saying he'll be released if he's innocent. The guard tells him to get back. Returning to his spot, the man rejoins the other prisoners. Thinking it's a shame, the guard says the man won't survive. Telling himself to forget the vendor, the guard shifts his focus. His attention turns to the prisoner right behind the man. Impressed, the guard wonders how they managed to catch such a strong barbarian. Among the prisoners, he walks in chains with all the others. Confused by the situation, he wonders what the hell happened to him. Analyzing his body, he realizes his former power has completely vanished. He notices that the madness and guilt that consumed him are also gone. He understands that he has somehow restarted the game. Even with all this, he says he still can't grasp the situation. He thinks that the game never started this way, as an old man calls out to him. In the old man's hand, he sees what looks like a root. Offering the root, the old man tells him to chew it to make the journey pass quickly. He just stares at the old man in silence, showing no reaction. The old man explains that he was once helped by barbarians, and this reminds him of them. Taking the root, he holds it firmly in his chained hands. The old man then asks how he was captured, but he doesn't know what to say. Hearing the answer, the elderly man just says he understands. He comments that the paladins are too hostile to those who don't follow their faith. Asking about the empire, he questions if there is an empire on this continent. He then realizes he's fallen into a parallel world with a different setup. He asks where they are going, and the old man replies that it's to the capital. There, the old man says, he will face a heresy trial. With a terrifying calm, he says it's a relief not to die immediately. The old man then screams, asking what he means by a relief. Shouting, he says the inquisitors will treat a heretic like a toy. He goes on, describing the various tortures they inflict on their victims. Suddenly, the paladin strikes the old man with a heavy blow. With the impact, the old man falls to the ground, motionless. The paladin then shouts that anyone who insults Elga's agents will die. Looking to the side, he says it's not over yet. Moving his horse, he approaches the prisoner right behind him. He asks the barbarian if he was the one who caused the commotion. With a serious look, he tells the barbarian to beg for forgiveness. He then says he'll let him live if he humiliates himself. With a smirk, he stares back at the paladin. Annoyed, he yells, asking how a mere heretic dares to mock him. Shouting that this is blasphemy, he charges with his weapon in hand. Without moving, he stares at the tip of the weapon coming toward him. Remaining calm, he keeps the smirk on his face. Completely surprised, the paladin doesn't understand what's happening. Using his hands, he easily stops the spear's blow. Screaming with effort, the paladin tries to push his weapon with all his might. His face furious, he yells for him to let go right now. He then says that if that's what he wants, he will let go. Released, the paladin loses his balance and nearly falls off his horse. Regaining his posture, he yells that he will judge the heretic right here and now. Eyes wide, he doesn't understand what just happened. Leaping into the air, he lunges forward to land a direct hit on the paladin. With a powerful impact, the blow sends the knight flying far away. Landing on the ground, he observes the result of his powerful attack. Lying on the grass, the paladin's horse is motionless and defeated. Nearby, the knight is also on the ground, completely unconscious. Still in chains, he turns to face the fallen enemy. Struggling to his feet, he says a heretic shouldn't dare to touch him. He finishes by saying that as an agent of God, this is unacceptable. Watching the knight, he notes that a paladin is still a paladin. Raising his spear, the paladin prepares to use an ability. Observing the scene, the barbarian is surprised by what he's seeing. praying. Beginning a prayer, he calls out to the Master of Eternal Radiance, Elga. Asking for permission, he says he will sentence the heretic in Elga's name. With his spear pointed, he prepares to deliver the blow. In a swift movement, he charges at the enemy with everything he's got. Rushing toward him, the paladin propels his body forward for the attack. Sensing the attack, he braces for the coming impact. He then says there's no way he can dodge that blow. Advancing rapidly, the paladin unleashes his strike with full force. Taking the hit, he's thrown back as the cart explodes. After the dust settles, the paladin stares at the barbarian lying in the wreckage. On the ground, he places a hand on his chest to check the wound. Approaching, the paladin says he can't believe he survived the attack. Advancing, the paladin says he's as tough as he is ugly. He thinks that even with his stats at 0, it's tough to fight like this. Clenching his fist, he says it would be easy with a demon nearby. Looking around, he tries to figure out how to get out of this situation. Catching a scent, he realizes it might be just what he needed. Suddenly, the paladin stops walking. He says he recognizes his strength, but this is the end. With a serious look, he tells the barbarian to seek forgiveness. Suddenly, the knight's eyes go wide with pure surprise. Covering his nose, he yells, asking what that horrible smell is. Starting to laugh, the barbarian gets up and stares back at him. The paladin then asks if he's gone mad from being so close to death. He says that the god Elga seems to have chosen him, not the paladin. With one blow, he shatters the wooden debris on the ground. From there, he pulls out the head of a monster that was hidden. Seeing the monster's head, the paladin recoils in disgust. At that, the wound on his chest begins to react. With a smile on his face, he stares at the knight without a trace of fear. Raising the monster's head, he prepares to use his ability. Lifting the head to his mouth, he begins to drink the blood. Everyone watches the scene, completely still and showing no reaction. The paladin says he's gone mad, drinking the demon's blood. Calling one of the guards, the paladin orders him to finish the heretic. Advancing slowly, the guard prepares to attack the empowered barbarian. With his weapon in hand, the guard hesitates before striking the enemy. The paladin then screams at the guard, ordering him to kill him. With a swift blow, his hand strikes the guard's face. Grabbing the guard's face, he holds it with immense force. Holding the soldier, he lifts him off the ground with just one hand. The guard begs for his life, pleading to be spared. Ignoring the plea, he squeezes the guard's face even harder. From a distance, the paladin watches the scene unfold, powerless to do anything. With a final blow, he crushes the guard's face with his hand. He thinks that with this power, he can now escape this procession. Screaming, he says this power is more than enough for everyone. Unleashing his energy, he screams with all the strength he has. Terrified, the other guards back away, afraid of what they're witnessing. Unable to speak, one of the guards trembles in fear at the sight. Screaming loudly, he yells that the prisoner is actually a monster. Afraid, the other guards end up dropping their weapons on the ground. Desperate, everyone there starts running to get away from him. The paladin yells for them not to retreat and to subdue the prisoner. Threatening them all, he says that anyone who flees will be severely punished. He thinks that if he takes a few more hits, he will die. Throwing the monster's head, he hits the paladin squarely. From the impact, the knight falls to his knees, completely unbalanced. On the ground, the paladin groans in pain, utterly defeated. Looking at the head on the ground, he asks if that's a demon. With sweat on his face, he struggles to face the new threat. Suddenly, his eyes go wide, completely shocked by the scene. Rushing forward, the barbarian charges toward the paladin to attack. Preparing for the fight, he begins to pray to his god, Elga. He then asks for permission for his agent to defeat the servant of evil. With a strained face, he channels all his power into the attack. Leaping toward him, the barbarian moves in to strike the knight head-on. Preparing the blow, he screams his god's name with all his might. With a precise strike, he hits his enemy squarely in the chest. He then says it's a shame, but this is the end. As he's struck, he asks if that's all the knight can do. Sweat on his face, he mutters in disbelief at what he just heard. Grabbing the blade, he stops it from piercing his body any further. With his hand on the blade, he prepares his counterattack against the knight. With a series of blows, he attacks the knight relentlessly. In the sky, a few clouds drift by as the fight continues. Continuing the assault, he strikes the paladin on the ground. He stands over the knight's body as the man begs him to stop. On the ground, he says he was wrong and begs for forgiveness just this once. Hearing the plea, he turns and begins to walk away. He then gives thanks for being spared from that situation. The paladin says he's a piece of trash and that he will get his revenge. Lying on the grass, he tries to catch his breath after the beating. As he swears revenge, he notices something strange is happening. Walking away, he picks up the knight's weapon. Seeing the shadow, the knight is startled by his approaching presence. With his face covered Covered in blood, he can't believe what he's seeing. Holding the spear, he says that despite everything, the man still prays to Elga. He then says he hopes he'll find his god in the afterlife. Calling him a child of Elga, he prepares for the final blow. With a decisive blow, he finishes the paladin using his own spear. Covered in blood, he just stares at his surroundings in total silence. Turning, he then observes the other guards who fled. Desperate at the scene, the soldiers run for their lives. Thinking about his first journey, he picks up one of the spears from the ground. Running without looking back, the guards try to escape that place. Glancing back, one of them keeps running, terrified of the enemy. Thinking he was safe, he's struck by a spear. One by one, the other guards are hit by fatal blows as well. He then thinks that you should never leave any loose ends behind. Hiding in the bushes, one last guard watches the scene from afar. Trembling with fear, he covers his own mouth to keep from making a sound. Turning back, he realizes there's still one last enemy. With a swift movement, he throws the spear toward the bush. Cutting through the air, the spear flies true toward the hidden target. Taking a direct hit, the last guard is defeated with a fatal blow to the head. With his back to the others, he turns to speak to the prisoners. One of them says the way he defeated the paladin was impressive. As he continues to speak, he's interrupted by a sudden, fatal blow. From the impact of the blow, the prisoner's head explodes instantly. Startled, the other prisoners are covered in blood, frozen in shock. He then thinks that this was a lesson from his first journey. Trying to escape, the other prisoners start running away. He thinks that you should never leave any loose ends behind. In a panic, they desperately try to run for their lives. A desperate prisoner screams, asking why he's doing this. He then begs him to stop, but the barbarian doesn't listen. With a final blow, he strikes him down without any mercy. After the attack, he turns and faces the fallen bodies. Amidst the corpses, he stands as the sole survivor. He thinks that he can't leave them alive, as they could turn him in. Spear in hand, he says he can't take that risk. Terrified, the last prisoner begins to weep desperately for his life. Crouched on the ground, he despairs at his situation. Seeing the approaching spear, he screams in fear of what's to come. Looking at the prisoner, he says that this is the last one. Preparing the blow, he raises his weapon to strike the man on the ground. Screaming that it's unfair, the man grabs the weapon with his hands. Staring at the prisoner, he readies himself to deliver the final blow. He then pleads for mercy, begging to be spared. With a serious look, he asks for a single reason to spare the man. Desperate, the prisoner says he has a wife and son and was framed. He says the man seems innocent, but that's not a good reason to live. Suddenly shouting, the man offers his services as an experienced guide. With the weapon aimed at him, he asks if the barbarian doesn't need a guide. Confused by the offer, he asks what a guide is exactly. The man then says he's a merchant who knows all the local geography. He asks since when the kingdom of Luquonia became a great empire. Understanding nothing, the prisoner is completely confused by the question. He then thinks the barbarian must have come from very far away. Pressing for an answer, he asks why the man went silent. The prisoner replies that 248 years have passed. Then he asks what year it would be on the old lunisolar calendar. The prisoner says it would be around the year 1130. He is shocked that the common calendar has now become something ancient. He then asks about the state of the continent and the demon realm. The merchant explains that the continent unified but is now divided. He continues, saying the church has grown and no one ever returns from the demon realm. Surprised by this information, he questions if truly no one has returned from there. Listing important names, he asks if the merchant has ever heard of them. The merchant, frightened, replies that he's never heard of any of those names. Suddenly, the merchant seems to recall the name Melissa with some surprise. The barbarian then says he thinks he's heard that name somewhere before. Trying to remember, he says maybe it was someone with a similar name. He doesn't understand how the heroes who defeated the archdemon were forgotten. Processing everything, he falls silent for a moment, just observing. He then asks why demons are everywhere now. The merchant says some believe it's a divine punishment from the god Elga. Others say it was a mage or a great evil that is yet to come. He finishes by saying that the truth can only be known by the gods. Standing, he remains silent for a moment, processing everything he's heard. With a swift movement, he slams the spear he was holding into the ground. Confused, the merchant just watches the barbarian walk away without a word. Looking out at the vast field, he faces the new horizon before him. He then concludes that he's 300 years into the future of his journey. Now he sees himself as an exile, cast out from his original world. All his previous knowledge is now hundreds of years outdated in this place. His old comrades in arms no longer exist in this era. Turning his face, he confronts his new solitary reality in this world. He questions if it's worth living by suppressing his madness with blood. Facing his destiny, he doubts if he can ever return home. He realizes that after this new game, even worse ones may appear. Closing his eyes for a moment, He braces for what's next. With both hands, he forcefully breaks the spear. The merchant watches the scene, completely confused by what's happening. With the tip of the weapon at his neck, he prepares to end it all. Holding the weapon firmly, he faces his fate without showing any fear. Frightened, the merchant asks what he's trying to do. He says that if he starts over, he'll only have more regrets to carry. With his hands on the weapon, he prepares for the final blow against himself. He just hopes that after everything, he doesn't end up in a game-over room. Closing his eyes, he remembers a conversation he had in the past. In a flashback, he recalls being asked about the future. Remembering Melissa, he recalls her talking about building a tower. Opening his eyes, he seems to have found a new hope to carry on. He asks the merchant if he said he'd heard the name Melissa before. The merchant replies that he believes it's the name of the first tower master. He then asks where this tower is, and the merchant stops him. The merchant explains that the journey will take at least 2 whole months. In silence, he stares at the merchant, processing the new information. With a slight smile, he seems to have found a new reason to live. Remembering Melissa, he says he can't even die when he wants to. He then orders the merchant to take him to the magic tower. He says he can't waste time as he needs to find the tower. He then offers the most precious thing he has as payment. With a serious look, he says the payment will be the guide's life. Tossing the spear to the ground, he gets ready to set out on his journey. He tells the merchant to grab his things so they can leave immediately. Amidst the wreckage, a sword catches the barbarian's eye. He says that weapon might be useful for what he needs. He thinks he'd love to take the spear, but he can't use the weapon. With a serious look, he regrets not having brought his old axe. The merchant then complains about the axe, but is relieved to be alive. The barbarian then collects the demon's blood in a container. With his new sword and the blood, he is ready for the journey. Telling the guide to move out, he prepares for his new journey. They then begin the long journey toward the magic tower they seek. At the battle site, the paladin's body attracts several crows. With red eyes, the crows watch the fallen and abandoned body on the ground. Someone then finds the body and recognizes the dead paladin's identity. A knight says they were all wiped out and asks what they'll do now. Calling for Lady Helia, he waits for a response from his superior. She orders him to find any clue that might be useful to them. After hearing the order, the knight says he understands what he needs to do. She wonders who on earth would dare to do something against a holy paladin. With a serious look, she says that no matter who the culprits are, they will pay. Under the moonlight, night falls, and the journey continues. At night, they make camp in a dark, silent forest. The campfire dies out, leaving the camp in total darkness. Lying near the dying fire, he rests to regain his strength. Beside the camp, the merchant left one of his belongings behind. Running through the forest, the merchant tries to escape as fast as he can. Breathless, he continues his desperate escape through the dark woods. Exhausted, he tells himself he's done, that he has to get out of there. With a tired face, he says he needs to get as far away as possible. He thinks having a companion would be nice, but he's in trouble. He remembers his companion is a barbarian who eats demons. After a few days, the merchant offers the barbarian some food. On another night, the merchant offers him a place to sleep. The merchant tries to start a conversation, but gives up mid-question. He realizes the barbarian doesn't speak, and he can't read his thoughts. He says the barbarian seems more like a wild beast than a human. With a scared look, he says if that were all, he could handle it. Suddenly, he stops, and the barbarian watches him from a distance. The barbarian then rushes him, saying he's too slow. The bigger problem, according to the merchant, is the barbarian's incredible speed. With a frightened face, he says the barbarian is already too far ahead. He complains that he can barely catch up to the barbarian before he disappears again. With his arms crossed, the barbarian glares at the merchant until he arrives. He feels like the barbarian will break him if he falls behind. The merchant thinks that if it weren't for him, they'd be miles away by now. Exhausted, he says he can't take it anymore and feels like he's going to die. Afraid, he decides he has to escape one way or another. Running through the night, the merchant puts his escape plan into action. The chance to escape, he says, came sooner than he expected. Muttering in pain, he continues his desperate run through the dark forest. He regrets leaving his bag behind, which held his fortune. He thinks that if he had tried to grab it, he might have woken the beast. He concludes that it's a waste, but his life is more precious. He wonders how long he's been running and feels lost. Suddenly, a voice asks where he's going in such a hurry. Startled, he turns around and is shocked by what he sees. Confused, he wonders how this is possible, where he came from. The barbarian then asks why the merchant is running away from him. With a serious look, he asks if the merchant doesn't want his payment. Unable to answer, the merchant stands frozen in fear before him. He then throws himself to the ground, saying he has committed a mortal sin. Begging for forgiveness, he bows before the barbarian, pleading for his life. The barbarian says he doesn't want apologies, he wants the reason for his escape. With a serious gaze, he orders the merchant to explain why he ran. The merchant then says that his pace is too fast to keep up with. He says he felt like he would die if he continued at that breakneck pace. Tired, the merchant thinks this is his end and that he's going to die. With a serious expression, he stares at the merchant without saying a single word. He then tells the merchant to get up so they can return to the camp. With a serious face, he informs him that from now on, he will walk slower. Walking ahead, he leads the way back to the camp. Confused, the merchant just watches the barbarian, not understanding what happened. Back at the camp, a new fire is lit to warm the night. The merchant sleeps exhausted, while the barbarian watches him by the fire. In his sleep, the merchant pleads for his life, thinking he's in danger. Sitting by the fire, he watches the merchant sleep in silence. He thinks his fast pace is a habit from his first journey. He remembers that on his journey, he lived with madness. With a sigh, he calms down, realizing he's in a safe place. He concludes that unlike before, he is no longer in constant danger. He says he now has a good reason to walk slower. The merchant suggests they avoid the border and take a detour. Surprised by the suggestion, he stares at the merchant for a brief moment. He then agrees to the plan and tells him they should do it. He thinks that without the merchant, he wouldn't be able to find the right path. The merchant says a barbarian wouldn't be safe in Imperial territory. He thinks it was hard to find demons because of the paladins. Looking at the vial, he says the blood will soon become useless. Through the night, they continue their journey through a dark, silent forest. Suddenly, the merchant stops and watches something intently. Behind the trees, he spots a small farming village. The merchant then suggests they ask for food and a place to stay. With a serious gaze, he observes the village with great suspicion. The merchant notices that no lights are on, which is very strange. He also notes that the village gate is open and unguarded. The merchant asks if it could be a village abandoned by everyone. He says he doesn't know, and they'll only find out if they go inside. Scared, the merchant asks if he's really going into that place. Suddenly, a strange noise is heard from inside the village. Startled, the merchant asks if he heard what just happened. He says it could be a monster or a demon and draws his sword. With sword in hand, he prepares for whatever he might find. With a smile, he says that this is good news for him. Arriving in a deserted village, he leads the way with his companion right behind him. Wondering what's going on, he comments that the place doesn't seem abandoned. Suddenly, his feet lock in place, and he stops walking through the village. He immediately goes on alert, watching for any suspicious movement from the houses. His partner then asks why he suddenly stopped walking. Noticing the only house with an open door, he points his sword toward it. Out of the darkness, a strange foot stomps hard on the dirt ground. Right after, a monster charges forward screaming, ready to strike with its weapon. Before it can land the blow, the monster's eye locks onto its opponent. With a single, swift strike, he hits the monster's neck without hesitation. After the blow, the monster's head is thrown back by the impact. His companion yells out as the monster's body falls. Then, a group of monsters appears, all armed and ready to attack. His partner says that goblins aren't usually aggressive and that something must have happened. With a smirk, he says it looks like they've come to the right place. Screaming loudly, one of the monsters leaps at him with a club. He counters with a quick, precise strike. Stunned, the other monsters watch the speed of his attack. Preparing for the group, he readies his sword. Another monster charges forward, screaming, trying to land a blow with its sharp weapon, but he parries the monster's blow, creating a loud clash of blades. With his sword, he continues to block the overhead attack. Seizing the opportunity, another monster screams and runs toward him. Even while engaged, he turns his head toward the new approaching threat. He lands a fatal blow to the chest of the monster right in front of him. In disbelief, the monster looks down at the sword piercing its body and groans. The monster then screams in pain as it takes the damage from the blow. Seeing all the monsters down, his partner asks if they've defeated them all. Asking if it's finally over, his partner hears him say that they don't know yet. He then pulls his companion back, who shouts out in confusion. From inside the house, a monster's hand grabs the edge of the door. Then a huge monster appears in the doorway, holding someone hostage. Realizing the situation, his partner yells that it's a little girl. The monster then screams and charges toward them, holding the hostage. Flying through the air, a sword is thrown at the creature. The weapon travels quickly, aimed right at the kidnapper monster's head. With a perfect shot, the weapon hits the target dead center. Hit, the monster falls backward and drops the girl on the ground. His partner complains, saying he could have hit the little girl. Holding the girl, he says confidently that would never happen. He then places the girl on the ground, setting her down safely. Carefully, he begins to untie the ropes that bound the little girl. Falling to the ground, the loose ropes show she is finally free. Looking at her, he says he needs to ask some important questions. Terrified by the situation, the girl just cries, unable to answer. His partner then tries to calm her down, saying they aren't bad people. Offering her a piece of candy, he tells her to just put it in her mouth. Tasting the candy, the girl starts to calm down and stops crying. He remarks that his partner is surprisingly good with kids like her. In response, he explains that he has a son at home around her age. In silence, he continues to watch the conversation between the two from a distance. Holding the candy, the girl quietly starts calling for her mother. Her partner then promises they will help find her mother, but she replies that she was abandoned there by her father and mother. Hearing this, he reacts with a look of surprise and seriousness. Shocked, his partner asks if it was her parents who tied her up like that. Understanding understanding the situation, he realizes what was really happening in that place. Suddenly, a woman screams the girl's name, calling for her daughter. Running ahead of a group, the woman is followed by several villagers. She then hugs the little girl, asking if she's okay after the scare. Crying, the mother thanks them for saving her daughter's life. Seeing the dead monsters, the villagers ask what happened there. One of them then approaches and asks if he was the one who did this. Pulling his sword from a monster's body, he answers no. While holding the weapon, he says it was actually his blade. He then asks why they tried to offer the child as a sacrifice. Finishing his thought, he says they did it for a demon. Explaining the story, a villager says the forest was full of monsters. Sitting at a table, he hears that the remaining monsters started to attack. Being very fierce, the monsters caused many deaths among the villagers, but when they gathered to fight back, they found an army of monsters. Recalling the creature, the villager says they saw the one that was leading them. With no strength left to fight, he says they surrendered in despair. The monster then announced it would visit the village the following week. Demanding a sacrifice, it ordered each house to give up its most useless child. Outraged, his partner asks if other children have already been taken by them. Arguing back, the villager asks who they should have given up instead. Filled with anger, the villager then clenches his fist tightly. Slamming his hand on the table, he stops the fight that just started. He then asks how many horns that thing had on its head. Not understanding the question, the villager answers that the creature had none. After hearing the answer, he falls silent for a moment. Grabbing his sword, he says it's all right and asks them to guide him. Confused by the request, the villager asks where they would take him. With a steady gaze, he asks where the villager thinks they're going, then declares their destination is the demon's lair. With a lit torch, the group prepares for the night's journey. Guided by the firelight, they walk together through the dark forest. Along the way, the villager warns that the village can't afford to pay. He replies that he's doing this for his own reasons and doesn't want a reward. Very grateful, the villager bows and thanks him for the great help. Saying he needs another weapon, he borrows an axe. Stopping in front of a cave, the villager says they've arrived. The group of men then walks toward the dark cave entrance. Observing the area, he falls silent before entering the lair. Saying they're heading back, the villager claims the village could be attacked. Outraged, his partner asks if they only came to guide the way. He then says he needs a helper to hold the torch during the fight. Not understanding the situation, his companion says he didn't expect this. Entering the dark cave, he leads the way with his partner right behind. His companion asks why he didn't criticize the villagers for their cowardice. He then asks if his partner has ever faced a live demon. Shaking his head, his partner says he's only seen demon corpses at the black market. Explaining the situation, he says humans are never the same after the fight. Normal people can't overcome the fear and despair of the confrontation. Even so, his partner says that not even animals sacrifice their own young. He says it was a choice to survive, so he can't condemn them. His partner reflects that for the children, the whole world has abandoned them. Questioning the meaning of it all, he wonders how to live after abandoning humanity. Seeing him keep walking, his partner calls out for him to wait. Remembering his past, he questions if he can ever have a life again. Asking if he said something wrong, he wants to know if the children are alive. Closing his eyes, he thinks for a moment before answering. Explaining his logic, he says a cruel demon would keep them alive. His partner doesn't understand the reasoning, as he grips the axe tightly. He then raises the axe, causing his panicked partner to scream. With a swift motion, he hurls the axe into the darkness of the cave. Startled by the throw, his partner screams and shuts his eyes tight. Spinning through the air, the axe flies at high speed into the depths. The weapon hits a target dead on, making a thud. Holding out a hand, he signals for his partner to wait behind him. Immediately after, a monster's body falls from the ceiling to the floor. With the axe in its head, the monster groans and his partner screams in surprise. In the darkness, several other monsters watch the scene with attentive eyes. Screaming in fury, the group of monsters charges forward to attack. With his partner scared, he just tells him to hold the torch steady for the fight. Stepping firmly, he advances toward the large group of monsters. Surprised, the monster screams as it sees the sword rapidly approaching. Landing a direct hit, he stops the monster's scream with his sword. With a quick move, he grabs another monster's arm in mid-air. Meanwhile, two other monsters prepare to attack him at the same time. His sword then blocks the enemy's strike, creating a huge impact. He then realizes the cave's terrain could hinder the battle. With the stalagmites, he understands it will be difficult to wield his sword freely. Watching the situation, two monsters wait for the right moment to strike. Adjusting his grip on the sword, he readies himself for the tough fight. Screaming in fury, the horde of monsters finally charges at him. With a quick blow, he swings his weapon for the first attack. His strike then lands squarely on one of the monster's heads. In the midst of battle, he keeps landing blows on all the enemies. Turning his head, he analyzes the bloody battle unfolding. Seeing the axe on the ground, he decides he should use that weapon too. Quickly, he grabs the handle of the axe lying on the floor. Pulling the weapon from the monster's body, he prepares to keep fighting. Wielding both weapons, he attacks the group of monsters with a flurry of strikes. His blows land squarely on the heads of the monsters trying to attack. With a final blow, he splits another monster's head open. The monster's head then falls to the ground, rolling near him. Watching the scene, his partner mutters, breaking into a cold sweat from the violence. Impressed, he says his companion defeated all the monsters by himself. Seeing the monsters flee, his partner shouts that they're retreating. With the axe still in hand, he prepares for his next move. He then announces they're going after the monsters that fled. Moving forward, they continue their path through the dark and dangerous cave. Arriving in a wider area, his partner notices the path has opened up. His partner asks if this is the base. Noticing the carved walls, sensing a different smell in the air, he sniffs to identify the threat. Warning that a demon is near, he tells his partner to stay back. He then tells his partner not to run, so he won't get caught by the monsters. Suddenly, his eyes widen, realizing the danger right in front of him. With a swift strike, the creature attacks by surprise, rushing past him. With his two weapons, he tries to defend against the attack. The demon says it has never seen him before, and that he's not a villager. Finding it all very interesting, the creature gives a strange smile. Analyzing the situation, he notes the enemy is different from what he'd heard. Observing the horn on the demon's forehead, he understands that it's growing. He then grumbles, knowing this goblin is going to be strong. Facing the demon, he braces for the tough fight ahead. He then realizes the horns mean it's evolved into a mid-rank demon. The demon then says it loves that expression on its opponent's face. Rushing forward, the creature lunges at him with a decisive strike. Turning his head, he manages to react just in time to defend himself. He then blocks the demon's blow, causing a massive shockwave between them. The creature says it likes humans because they're weak and follow orders. Realizing its speed, he admits he only blocked it out of pure combat instinct. He confirms its strength and agility are not those of a weak demon. The demon says he killed many goblins and must now beg for forgiveness. He knows that not even elite soldiers are guaranteed to defeat a mid-rank demon. Saying it'll give him a chance, the creature slowly approaches him. The demon orders him to stop using one of his arms immediately. It commands him to use the axe to cut off his arm and then eat it all. Sensing the danger, he knows it's difficult to face this demon in his current state, but he notices the demon's horns haven't fully grown yet. Asking what he's doing, the demon demands to know why it isn't being obeyed. Pointing his sword at the ground, he says the demon has talked enough. Grabbing a canteen, he warns that he doesn't take orders from a bag of blood. He then pierces the object, spilling all the red liquid inside. The demon reacts in surprise, wondering what that smell is. Pouring the contents over his head, he drinks all the liquid from the canteen. Completely empty, the blood-stained container falls to the dark cave floor. His body then begins to shake, reacting to what he just drank. Screaming in pain, he undergoes a transformation, his eyes glowing. With a surprised look, the demon watches the transformation without moving. Turning his face, his eyes now have a completely different appearance. Holding the axe, he thinks he needs to end this fight as quickly as possible. The demon then feels fear, refusing to be afraid of a mere human. Filled with rage, the demon says it will definitely finish him. Screaming loudly, the demon charges with its claws for the final attack. He then realizes the creature's judgment has been affected by its horns. With a swift blow, the demon swings its claws to hit him. Able to see its movements, he prepares to dodge the next blow. He then parries the blow with his axe, creating a powerful impact. Screaming in surprise, the demon recoils for a moment from the block. Looking at his axe, he notices the weapon is now cracked. At this rate, he knows the blade will break at any moment. He then pulls his sword from the ground, ready to fight even with his bare hands. Baring its claws, the demon growls, preparing for the next attack. The creature then screams that it will never forgive that human. With a quick step, he charges toward the demon without hesitation. Then Kadim spins his body, preparing a powerful strike with his sword. As it starts its attack, the creature takes a heavy blow right to the face. The impact drags its feet backward, kicking up dust from the ground. Holding the axe, the monster questions what kind of strength that is. Seeing an opening, Kadim attacks, shattering the ground with his movement. The creature wonders how a mere human has so much destructive power. As the monster screams, he charges at his opponent. The creature then prepares a direct attack with its sharp claws. Without even flinching, he takes the blow, which hits him hard. After the attack, the creature readies another blow, dragging its claws on the ground. Maintaining his stance, he braces for the enemy's next attack. When the attack comes, Kadim faces it without any fear. But the goblin ends up dodging. Screaming, Kadim is about to end the battle with his strike. With its legs firmly planted, the creature braces for what's coming, but Kadim ends up missing the strike. Now standing, he faces the completely defeated defeated monster on the ground. Fallen, the monster asks what he really is. It then says that the warrior cannot be human. Showing no reaction, his gaze remains fixed on the monster before him. Reaching a conclusion, it says that he is a monster in human skin. Overcome with despair, the monster lunges at him with everything it has. Retreating, the creature hides behind a stone pillar. It then realizes it's being overpowered and its attacks have been blocked. Looking away, the vendor desperately yells for them to get back. The vendor drives away small monsters with a torch. He yells for the monsters to stay away, asking if they want a taste of fire. Hidden, the monster says it just needs to get rid of that fire. Looking up, Kadim notices the direction the monster climbed. With his hand, he gets ready to pick up his axe again. He grips the weapon firmly, ready for action. He then says it's obvious what its objective is. He then warns that he won't let the monster do as it pleases. Climbing down the wall, the monster stares at Kadim below. He realizes the creature is too fast and will dodge any attack. With a determined look, he comes up with a new strategy for the fight. Gripping the handle of his axe, he prepares to execute his plan. He decides he's going to smash the ground where the monster is standing. With a powerful blow, he strikes the ground right beneath the creature. Caught by surprise, the monster doesn't understand what's happening. His axe comes down, spinning with impressive force and speed. On impact, the cave floor explodes, sending rocks flying everywhere. Plummeting, the creature begins to fall along with the debris from the wall. On the ground, the impact of the blow kicks up a cloud of dust and fragments. On the ground, the monster complains that dust got in its eyes. Taking a step forward, he readies himself for his next move. Moving in quickly, he delivers a precise strike to the creature's face. Feeling the blow, the creature screams as the weapon pierces its eye. Screaming in pain, the monster cries out that it hurts a lot. He then comments that the creature's face looks much better now. Even wounded, the monster screams that it's going to kill him. Surprised, he says he didn't think the monster would still be alive. Gripping his weapon tighter, he prepares for his next move. He warns that the monster is starting to become a nuisance. Screaming in pain, the creature desperately begs him to stop. With one last strike, he finishes the creature once and for all. He then steps away from the monster's body left behind. With its head split open, the creature still lets out one final snarl. A final, devastating blow lands squarely on the monster's head. With his back turned, he mentions that the buff is still active. Relieved, he says it's a good thing the buff didn't run out sooner. Hearing the word king, he looks to the side in surprise. Trembling with fear, the goblins cower at the sight of their fallen leader. He notices the goblin's ferocity has diminished after the demon's death. Wielding his sword, he prepares to continue the slaughter of the monsters. With a single strike, he lunges forward and defeats the first goblin in his path. He says he's going to finish them all before finally leaving this place. The goblin screams in terror as it sees its companion's head on the ground. Without wasting a moment, he charges at the last screaming goblin. His strike hits the monster squarely, catching it by surprise. He then notices that one of the goblins is fleeing with its back to him. His gaze shifts, focusing on the last remaining opponent. Cornered, the small goblin faces him, holding its torch in fear. He says the goblin with the torch is the last one. Just as he's about to strike, he hears someone desperately calling his name, but the vendor shouts desperately, calling for his lord. His eyes widen in surprise as he hears a familiar voice calling him. He stops his swing, his weapon just inches from the terrified vendor's face. Breaking into a cold sweat, the vendor remains paralyzed with fear in this unexpected situation. Seeing the attack stop, the vendor is in shock, not understanding anything. His intense gaze then softens as he finally recognizes the person in front of him. Worried, the vendor asks if he's all right, noticing something on his face. He then explains that the children are deeper inside and need to be saved. Nodding, the vendor says he understood the plan perfectly. He then drags the demon's body, walking toward the cave exit. Back in the village, the people celebrate upon learning the children have returned. Crying with joy, the parents hug their children, who are finally safe. Carrying the creature on his shoulder, he receives the thanks of the entire village. A grateful old woman offers him some stew and invites him to eat. He asks her to give the food to the children who have returned hungry. Saying he needs to rest, he tells the vendor to go eat with the others. As the warrior walks away, the vendor looks back with a worried expression. In a flashback, one of the rescued children shows a look of pure panic. Looking up, the vendor seems very confused by the whole situation. With a stunned look on his face, he asks, "What the hell is going on here?" In the cave, the children repeat strange words and beg not to be left behind. He then explains that they've been brainwashed since they were captured. Continuing, he says their parents abandoned them, leaving the children traumatized. They were also told they were the most useless children in the world. This process was so powerful that not even a priest could resist it. But he corrects himself, saying it was a fact engraved in their minds. Horrified, the vendor asks why a demon would do something so terrible. In response, he says it's in their nature to feed on human despair. With nothing to say, The vendor remains silent after the explanation. Now he understands what Kadim meant about a less cruel demon. Then he asks if there's any hope if the parents truly repent. He says it's not impossible, but he doubts these parents are capable of it. Wordless, the vendor just stares at the ground, thinking about the harsh reality. Turning around, the guide begins to walk away from the village in silence. Carrying the body, he passes through the village's wooden gate. Suddenly, someone asks in surprise if he's leaving already. The vendor suggests he should rest, but he says witnesses have already appeared. He explains that killing a paladin is something they won't ignore. Remembering what happened, the vendor is shocked as the realization hits him. Saying they need to hurry, he warns that trackers might be on their way. The scene changes to two knights observing the body of a fallen paladin. With a serious expression, Helia surveys the scene of the fight. He stabs the dagger into the monster's neck to collect its blood. He then holds the monster's head, collecting the liquid in a container. With his objective complete, he says that this will be enough for an emergency. After collecting what he needed, he throws the monster's body to the ground. A villager then asks what he plans to do with the demon's body. He coldly replies that he doesn't need the body and orders them to burn it. Confused, the villager thinks about the value the demon's body could have. He then realizes he could profit greatly by selling the body, but the warrior warns of the danger of letting the smell of blood spread. With a serious look, he asks if they want another attack from crazed goblins. Not knowing how to respond, the man gets nervous at the warrior's warning. He then stammers, saying they were already planning to burn the monster's body. As he turns to leave, an old woman calls him by the title of mercenary. As a thank you, she offers him some useful items the villagers have gathered. He thanks her and says he'll make good use of all the items. Putting on the new boots, he prepares for the long journey. Tightening his belt, he adjusts his new travel gear. Saying the quality is decent, he gets ready to leave immediately. When a sharp pain hits his chest, he feels a strong pang. With his hand on his chest, he remembers the wound made by the paladin. While other wounds have healed, that one remains open even after 10 days. Thinking about it, he concludes the spear was a consecrated weapon. Back at the crime scene, the paladin's spear is still stuck in the ground. One of the knights turns and calls the woman Lady Helia. He reports they found no clues, and she calls him pathetic. She orders him to deduce the culprit's intent, since everyone was killed. Surveying the scene, she notes that nothing was stolen, and the body was butchered. Curious, the knight asks if she already has a suspect in mind. Yelling, she says she's talking about spirits and tells him to investigate. She screams that there's a reason he hasn't been promoted. He thinks she's arrogant, but he can't talk back because of her position. Being Archpaladin Helia, she defeated 20 demons alone to earn her rank. Despite her terrible personality, she is the youngest and most powerful Archpaladin in the Empire. Frustrated, he recognizes that as a mere paladin, he is no match for her. He then accepts the situation, realizing there's nothing he can do. Helia orders him to get the sacred relic the Archbishop gave them. Shocked, he asks if she means Damien's twin mirrors. Being relics that reflect the past and future, one of them has already broken. Annoyed, she yells, asking if he'd rather report their failure to the Archbishop. She reassures him, saying the mirror would only break if it reflected an archdemon. Reluctantly, he hands the sacred artifact to his immediate superior. Kneeling on the ground, she prepares to use the sacred relic. In her hands, the mirror begins to emit a very intense glow. The artifact then projects an image of the recent events at the location. In the vision, Kadim appears, drinking a demon's blood. Seeing the scene, the paladin wonders what the hell is happening there. With a furious gaze, the Kadim in the vision stares down his enemies. Suddenly, the mirror in her hands shatters completely. Shocked, the knight shouts that the mirror suddenly broke. She says it's impossible, as it reflected a being of an archdemon's level. He then suggests they go back and report the monstrosity they saw. Questioning the idea, she says there's no reason to go back now. With determination, she announces they will continue the search for the culprit. Holding her sword, she readies herself for the hunt to come. With her firm stance, she shows she is ready for combat. She then vows to execute that demon with her own hands. Changing scenes, the merchant is squatting alone by a riverbank. Worried, he thinks about the children's future and his own son. Shaking his head, he tries to get rid of his bad thoughts. Determined to survive, he fills his canteen with water from the river. Returning to the camp, he sees the warrior already lying near the fire. He calls out that dinner will be ready soon, finding it strange to see him lying down. Confused by the lack of response, he gets closer to get a better look. Then he sees Kadim trembling and desperately asks what's happening. Supporting Kadim, he is shocked by the state of someone who seemed invincible. He notices the wound on his chest, asking what happened all of a sudden. Panting, he thinks he should have realized sooner about the consecrated weapon. He then remembers the weapon had a blessing to harm demons. Being a berserker, the demon blood in his body is reacting to the blessing. The merchant says they should have rested, but he warns it wouldn't have helped. Then he asks about the phase of the moon, leaving the merchant confused. Relieved, he realizes there's still time to do what he needs to do. Suddenly, a noise in the air catches their attention. Frightened, the merchant merchant wonders if that sound is what he fears. Pairs of glowing eyes appear as howls echo through the dark forest. Growling, a bladed wolf stares them down, completely terrifying the merchant. Taking a deep breath, he prepares for combat, even though he's wounded. Grabbing his weapons, he firmly wields his axe and sword. He then steps in front, telling the frightened merchant to stay back. Sweating, he just thinks that this world won't leave him in peace. Facing the pack, he calls them mutts, getting ready to fight. Raising his weapons, he says they chose a terrible time to show up. Facing the warrior, the wolf pack bares its teeth, ready to attack. Though injured, he takes a deep breath and prepares for the coming battle. The pack then advances slowly toward the camp, surrounding the two of them. With a snarl, the first wolf of the pack leaps to attack directly. Without flinching, he readies a powerful blow with his axe to defend himself. His strike lands squarely on the wolf's head, which takes the full impact. He then lands another blow, sending the creature flying far away. He then complains that his vision is shaking and he can barely aim straight. Seizing the opportunity, two wolves charge forward to attack at the same time. Readying his sword, he positions himself to strike one of the wolves. With a swift movement, he hits the first wolf with a clean strike. As he attacks, another wolf comes from the side to bite him. The creature manages to bite his arm, sinking its teeth in deep. With his free hand, he delivers a powerful blow to the wolf. He notices a wolf on his back and throws a powerful punch at it. Just then, another wolf takes the chance to bite his leg. Turning his head, he faces the creature that attacked him by surprise. Without wasting time, he plunges his sword into the wolf's head. Panting, he leans on his sword, surrounded by the bodies of the wolves. But the remaining pack reorganizes, preparing for a new assault. He realizes they are experienced hunters, and he won't last much longer. Looking back, he yells for the vendor to get away from the imminent danger. The vendor tries to help, using torches to keep the wolves at bay. With no other choice, he decides to drink the demon blood, even though it's dangerous. Seeing his action, the wolves pause for a moment, watching intently. He then tips the vial, drinking all the demon blood in one go. Standing up, he faces the pack, ready to end the fight. He realizes the buff changes depending on the type of demon blood. With his body energized, he finishes off the wolves that were coming toward him. The buff he received impressively increases his agility. Remembering the demon's agility, he understands the blood's effect. Afraid of his new power, the wolves begin to slowly retreat. Surprised, the vendor shouts that the wolves are fleeing the fight. He realizes they aren't fleeing, but regrouping to attack. Just then, a huge white paw slams down hard on the ground. Sensing the presence, he turns around and goes on high alert. Covered in scars, the giant wolf glares at the two of them with a snarl. The vendor says that wolf is strange and twice the size. He then realizes that creature is the pack leader. To make matters worse, he notices his buff is wearing off. Lunging forward, the giant wolf attacks him with a powerful blow. He wonders what kind of power this is, trying to resist the weight. Straining hard, he withstands the pressure of the creature's blow. Feeling the impact, he ends up spitting from the exertion. He then staggers back, caught by the frightened vendor. Desperately, the vendor asks if he's okay and what happened. He yells for the warrior to wake up, as the wolf is right in front of them. With a hand on his chest, he feels the wound ache intensely again. Snarling, the giant wolf faces the two of them, who are badly injured and exhausted. He then thinks that it's time and the conditions have been met. Surprised by what he sees, his body suddenly begins to react. He says the moment he's been waiting for has finally arrived. It's midnight, and the moon is completely hidden in the starry sky. With his sword, he plunges it forcefully into the ground. He then invokes Athala, the undefeated master of all weapons. Kneeling, he blesses the warrior who is thirsty for battle and enemy blood. He says that now, the eye that watches over the land has finally closed. A powerful energy begins to emanate from him, impressing the wolf and the vendor. Shocked, the giant wolf backs away, sensing the power of that transformation. Not understanding anything, the vendor wonders what the hell is going on. Meanwhile, the warrior's body is engulfed in intense flames. A voice then asks what name he will give his blade. He thinks it's been a long time since he felt that resonance of his will. Revealing his choice, he says the blade's name is Mosquito. Holding the sword, he completes the weapon's naming ritual. A mysterious symbol begins to form on the blade's surface. Finishing the process, the shape completes itself, revealing a unique mark on the weapon. He then reveals himself as the one who discards the name, a unique characteristic. Enraged, the giant wolf snarls and lunges at Kadim with full force. Terrified, the merchant shouts for his master, fearing the worst. Picking up his sword, he prepares for the final showdown. He then charges forward, countering the giant creature's strike with his sword. With a snarl, the wolf faces him, ready for battle. A notification appears, announcing that a special effect of the sword has been activated. Blood begins to be absorbed by the sword's blade, making it glow. The effect's name is revealed as Lifesteal, a powerful ability. Feeling the effect, He says he can breathe again and his wounds have healed. Snarling, the giant wolf glares at him, sensing the danger of that ability, but he says it's not enough and calls it to fight again. The wolf then charges, but he strikes it with a precise blow. With his sword, he lands a fatal blow right in the middle of its head. Holding the sword in his hand, he shows that the fight is over. With the stolen life force, all his wounds are healed instantly. Analyzing his body, he notices that even the curse wound has healed. He thinks that the wolves showing up was a blessing in disguise. His new sword has the effect of stealing life with every strike, but he knows he'll need dozens of monsters to fully heal. Still, he says that for now, it's more than enough. He thinks that getting a special effect without materials is a huge advantage. Sheathing his sword, he says that learning not to be greedy is a lesson in itself. From behind a tree, the merchant asks if the battle is finally over. Seeing the bodies, he's shocked that even the pack leader is dead. He then approaches and is stunned to see the healed wounds. Turning around, Kadim asks why the merchant didn't run away. Not understanding, the merchant is surprised by his question. He says that if the merchant had abandoned him, he would never have caught up. Confused, the merchant tries to understand what that question means. After thinking, he finally realizes the intention behind the question. With a smile, he says the wolves would have hunted him down anyway. The merchant then wonders why he didn't flee, realizing he was worried about Kadim. Asking him to keep watch, Kadim turns to get some rest, but he warns him not to try to run away because he would find him. Frightened by the threat, the merchant freezes in pure fear. Sitting by the fire, he keeps watch during the starry night. The next day, the merchant looks tired and thoughtful about the journey. He shows the map, saying it will take another 10 days to arrive. Kadim then says he'd rather not run into any more paladins, but the merchant reassures him, saying he chose a safer route. He then comments that bandits wouldn't be a problem for Kadim. Kadim suggests they stop at Morden Castle to restock. Showing the map, the merchant explains the route they will take. Kadim realizes the route will lead them to their final destination. In a flashback, it's shown that the region was a battlefield. No one trusted a giant barbarian with the potential for mass destruction. He remembers Melissa, who looked at him as if he were an insect. She described him as a tall ogre with tanned skin. With a smile, he remembers the notes she took about him, but the merchant reassures him, saying that times have changed a lot. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by a noise on the road. They hide and watch a group of people standing in the path. He then asks the merchant what he thinks is happening. The merchant says they look like bandits, but the situation is very strange. Not wanting trouble, Kadim suggests they look for a detour, but one of the men in the group notices their presence. He then shouts and points, drawing everyone's attention to them. Annoyed by the situation, Kadim realizes he can't avoid it. With no choice, they approach the group of men on the road. He then draws his weapons, preparing for another fight. He then approaches the group, ready to handle the situation. With a serious face, he stares down the men blocking the path. Suddenly, one of the men starts shouting in a very strange way. Clapping his hands, he enthusiastically celebrates Kadim's arrival. The man calls him over, saying he knew he would come. Meanwhile, the other group of men takes advantage of the confusion to escape. Celebrating, the man laughs at the others who fled like scared rats. Annoyed, he asks one last time what they are doing. The man then calls him the Raging Horn of Agon, thanking him for his help. He replies that he has no intention of helping, and tells them to leave. Shocked, they ask if he isn't the Raging Horn of Agon. Speechless, the two men fall silent, confused. Annoyed, the man draws his dagger and asks who he is then. With an enraged face, he yells that Kadim is a nobody. Beside him, the merchant is startled by the turn of events. With the dagger at his throat, the man demands to know how he'll pay. He thinks the man's attitude changed just because he wasn't who they were expecting. The man then turns to the vendor, asking what he's carrying. He orders the vendor to come closer so he can see the bag. Losing patience, he grabs him and yanks him closer. Unfazed, Kadim just stares at the situation with a cold look. The man points, saying the confusion is Kadim's fault. He remains silent, listening to the man's accusations without a word. Smiling, the man says that since he won't pay, he has another idea. He then suggests that Kadim join them to fight. The proposal is for him to pretend to be the barbarian and scare off their enemies. As payment, the man says they'll keep the vendor's bag. In a provocative tone, he asks if Kadim is actually a woman. Mockingly, he says it's his first time seeing a barbarian. The vendor worries, thinking his master is holding back. Slapping his own chest, the man says everything is settled. With a serious gaze, he stares at the man without saying a single word. The man then asks for the name of the barbarian standing there. He says he'll gladly reveal his name. With one swing, he cuts off the head of the man who was threatening him. The man's head rolls across the ground, stopping near his feet. The other men are shocked, unable to believe what they just saw. In despair, the henchman henchman screams in fear upon seeing his boss killed. The vendor thinks that, just as he suspected, the trouble was far from over. Enraged, the man charges forward, shouting that he won't leave there alive. Wielding his sword, he says his name is Kadim, the great warrior. With a look of pure fury, he reveals himself as a Kadim of Atala. A yellow butterfly gently lands on the tip of his axe handle. The camera pulls back, showing the axe stuck in the forest floor. With a swift motion, he grabs the axe, and the butterfly flies away. With a single blow, he defeats the last of the men who attacked him. Holding the axe, he examines the weapon after the battle. He notices the blade is dull and the joints are loose. Sheathing the weapon, he decides he needs a better axe. Whimpering, the last man standing stares at him in terror. Dagger in hand, he asks if all his companions are dead. With a serious look, he slowly approaches the frightened man. The man tries to run but stumbles. On the ground, the man screams in pain from the fall. With his foot on him, Kadim says he won't hurt him. He then threatens him, demanding he answer all of his questions. Kadim asks about the group and someone called the Raging Horn of Agon. Afraid, the man stays silent, unsure of what to say. The vendor explains that Agon is a city in the center of the Alliance. The Raging Horn of Agon is a legendary mercenary from the local arena. He then asks if those fools mistook him for this legend. The vendor says it's strange, since he's a huge celebrity. But the man shouts that his boss was a friend of the famous mercenary. Screaming, he threatens Kadim, saying the mercenary will come for him. Kadim then stomps hard on the fallen man's back. In pain, he explains that his gang was kicked out of their territory. The vendor then says the man was completely deceived by his boss. He explains that the mercenary would have helped them live a decent life. Confused, the fallen man doesn't understand what's being said. He begins to doubt, thinking it's not possible that his boss lied. But Kadim thinks it's better to strike first than to be tracked down. He also sees a chance to loot their supplies without feeling guilty. He then orders the man to take him to the bandits' base. Terrified, the man refuses to obey Kadim's order. With another stomp, he forces him to obey. Screaming in pain, the man agrees and leads them to the base. At the cave entrance, 2 guards watch over the bandits' hideout. Inside, the gang leader sits on his throne, deep in thought. With his hand on his chin, he looks bored and waits for news. He introduces himself as Graham, leader of the Blood Cave Gang. Angrily, he says the famous mercenary doesn't even know who he is. He reveals he was actually a mediocre and failed gladiator. Dejected, he confesses that he lied to his men about the messenger. He then wonders where it all started to go wrong. He just wanted to live a simple life with his loyal subordinates. Angrily, he blames the Black Hammer Gang for all his misfortune. One of his men runs in, shouting that the mercenary has arrived. The man bursts in, desperately screaming that the Raging Horn of Agon is here. He runs to the boss, desperately begging for help to save himself. Confused, he asks why his man is begging for help so desperately. Suddenly, he sees his henchman's head get struck by an axe. His face shows pure shock. He can't believe what he's seeing. He recognizes the barbarian attire and Kadim's massive physique. In disbelief, he wonders if that man is the real mercenary. Pointing his sword, Kadim asks if he is the leader of the group. Speechless, the leader stands frozen, staring at the man before him. He enters the cave and faces the man sitting on the throne. With a serious look, he prepares for the final confrontation. The chief thinks that this isn't the mercenary since he's seen him before. He remembers his man's head, knowing the others are dead. Realizing the danger, he concludes the barbarian is a great threat. Slamming a fist on the table, he stands up to face Kadim. Determined, he moves in to strike first and catch the enemy by surprise. Kadim asks if he plans to fight with his bare hands. With his eyes glowing, the chief reveals he has a special ability. Surprised, Kadim braces for the coming attack. Without hesitation, the man prostrates himself and begs for his life. He offers all his treasures, pleading not to be killed. The vendor is surprised by the gang leader's change in attitude. Begging, he asks why Kadim still has his sword raised. Desperate, he offers a tribute to spare his life. He realizes it's no use, as Kadim won't listen. Suddenly, he looks at Kadim's axe and gets an idea. Noticing the weapon's condition, he has one last card to play. He then offers a treasure map that leads to a weapon. With a sword to his neck, he says the map leads to a dwarven axe. Curious, Kadim asks about this dwarven throwing axe. He explains it's a weapon forged with the souls of master blacksmiths. Telling him to continue, Kadim shows interest in the man's story. Relieved, the man thinks he's managed to get Kadim's attention. He describes the axe, saying its blade never dulls. Kadim knows that dwarven weapons are rare and very powerful. In this world, races like dwarves and elves are minorities and quite rare. Because of this, dwarven equipment is extremely hard to come by. He then thinks this is an opportunity he can't miss. Curious, he asks where the treasure map the man mentioned is. Smiling, the man says he needs to secure his life first. Kadim finds it interesting that a bandit wants to negotiate with him. With a swift move, he shoves a dagger into the man's chest. Stunned by the blow, the man doesn't understand what's happening. Screaming in pain, he writhes with the dagger embedded in his chest. He then says he'll keep stabbing him until he talks. Trembling with fear, the man realizes he has no choice but to cooperate. Changing scenes, a man reports what he saw at the other gang's hideout. The others doubt him, saying he always spouts nonsense and they don't believe him. Annoyed, the chief slams his hammer on the ground and tells them to stop. Sitting on his throne, he listens attentively to his men's report. The leader, Kreven, questions if the mercenary really showed up to help. The men confirm the story, saying they saw it with their own eyes. With a furious glare, he asks if they think this makes any sense. Pleading, they say they saw a barbarian the size of a bear. He thinks they saw something, but he doubts it was the mercenary. He believes it's just a mercenary hired to pose as him. But just in case, he prepares for the possibility that it's true. Suddenly, a man runs in, warning that they're under attack. The chief asks how many there are, and the man says there are only 2. One of them, he says, is a barbarian who looks like the legend. The henchmen are shocked by the news, unable to believe there are only 2. With a serious face, he realizes the situation is more severe. He knows that if it's true, they won't stand a chance in a direct fight. Gripping the handle of his hammer, he orders his men to get ready. He picks up his hammer, preparing for the coming combat. With a determined look, he stands up to check the situation. He wants to be sure if that man is the real raging horn of Agon. Meanwhile, Kadim and the vendor approach the enemy base. Worried, the man asks if he really plans to enter the hideout. Kadim reminds him that he was the one who said the map was there. Afraid, he explains that the map was stolen by the other gang. He tries to convince him, saying the gang is very large and dangerous. Kadim asks how many men they have, and he answers that there are 100. He comments that it's a large number for an outlying gang. Unfazed, he says it will be tiring, but he wants to get it over with. Confused by the answer, the man doesn't understand Kadim's calmness. They then arrive at the entrance, and the enemy chief faces them. The 2 leaders face off with tension thick in the air. Surprised, the chief asks what Graham is doing there. Shouting, Graham says he's come to declare the rival gang's ruin. He then introduces Kadim as the legendary raging horn of Agon. Shocked, the gang members believe the lie he told. Smiling, he thinks he can now escape while everyone is distracted. Appearing behind him, Kadim grabs him by the head with force. He then throws the man to the ground, yelling that he's not the mercenary. With a serious look, he says there's no need to shed blood. Smiling, the gang leader says he already knew he wasn't the legend. Grabbing the hostage, he shouts that he isn't Agon's raging horn. He then suggests there's no need for them to shed blood. Watching everything unfold, their leader deduces he's just a mercenary from Graham. Still, he wonders why the man seems so confident. At that moment, a huge warhammer slams into the ground. Preparing for the worst, one of the archers already aims his weapon. Further away, 2 men watch the whole situation unfold. Completely surrounded, he faces the enemies laughing at him. The leader then asks what item he came for, offering to help. He refuses, saying he has a map and just wants them to get out of the way. Hearing that, the leader repeats the word map, looking surprised. Right after, he holds up a scroll, asking if this is it. Desperate, the hostage yells, questioning how he got that map. He reveals he found it hidden, calling it a very valuable treasure. With a smile, he asks if that's what the mercenary was looking for. Seeing this, he goes on high alert at the enemy's attitude. Laughing, the leader simply tears the map into several pieces. Surprised, the hostage desperately asks why he's tearing it up. Ignoring the question, he puts the pieces of the map in his mouth. After chewing, he swallows the scroll, shocking the hostage. Slapping his own belly, he dares the barbarian to get the map. With a smirk on his face, he finishes the sentence saying, "If you can." Without changing his expression, he replies that he'd be glad to. He then says he'd better hurry before the map is digested. Realizing the threat, the leader yells for his men to shoot now. Ready, one of the archers puts his finger on the trigger of his weapon. An arrow is then fired at high speed toward him. Watching the attack, he stays focused on what needs to be done. Without a second thought, he shoves the hostage, yelling for him to run. Throwing the man aside, he gets rid of the extra weight to fight. Multiple arrows are fired at high speed in his direction. Using the hostage as a shield, he blocks the deadly attack. Outraged by the scene, the leader can't believe what he just did. As the man screams in pain, he continues to hold his body. Seeing his coldness, the leader realizes he used the hostage on purpose. He orders his men to aim for the exposed parts and fire again. At that, one of the archers tries to reload his weapon as quickly as possible. Suddenly, an axe is thrown with great force toward the archers. Noticing the danger, the archer looks up, terrified. With no chance to react, he's hit dead on by the blow. The blow lands right in the middle of his head, finishing the enemy. After the throw, he points forward, indicating the next target. A companion yells for him to get down, noticing the axe too late. Getting hit again, the man begs them to stop shooting. Protecting his face, his hand is pierced by one of the arrows. In complete desperation, the man screams, begging them to just kill him. Annoyed, the leader scolds his men and orders them to cease fire. Changing strategies, he orders the rest of his men to advance. As the enemies approach, he readies himself for the imminent combat. To get rid of the weight, he hurls the hostage's body at the bandits. Throwing the body toward the enemies, he uses it as a distraction distraction. Crouching down, he grabs a canteen and says he'll need a plan. He decides he'll end this using a quick and precise method. Watching the scene, the leader wonders what he's drinking. After drinking the liquid, his entire body seems to grow much stronger. Gripping his sword tightly, he stomps on the ground, preparing to fight. With his gaze completely focused, he faces the group of enemies. In a swift move, he rushes at them, leaving them all behind. Confused, the soldiers ask what happened, saying he vanished. Appearing among them, he lands a fatal blow on 2 men at once. Confused by the attack, the soldiers scream, not understanding what happened. With an effect activated, he stomps firmly on the ground, ready to attack. Moving quickly, he strikes several enemies at once. With his enhanced agility, the soldiers complain about his absurd speed. His blade moves at high speed, cutting through the air toward them. Hitting 3 more enemies, he keeps advancing without stopping for a second. Watching from a distance, the leader hears his men say he's invisible. Breaking into a cold sweat, he wonders where such unknown power came from. Coming to a conclusion, he calls him a monster, unable to believe the scene. Swallowing hard, he seems to be thinking of a new plan of attack. He then orders his archers to give him their loaded crossbows. Taking the weapon, he prepares to take the next shot himself. Aiming carefully, he waits for the right moment to shoot him. He notices the enemy pauses for an instant after each strike. His plan was to shoot when he turned his back for the next attack. Finding the perfect opening, he prepares to shoot the target. Firing the weapon, the bolt flies at high speed toward him. Turning his face back, he notices the bolt. With a smile on his face, the leader celebrates, saying he hit him. Through the air, an arrow flies at high speed toward its target. Sensing the imminent danger, he turns his face toward the arrow. With a victorious smirk, the leader celebrates, certain he made the shot. Turning completely, he faces the arrow just as it's about to hit him. Seeing the unexpected reaction, the leader is confused about what just happened. In a swift motion, his hand snatches the shaft of the arrow from the air. Holding the arrow he just caught, he glares at the leader. In complete shock, the leader wonders how the barbarian caught the arrow. Stomping his foot on the ground, he prepares to finally charge forward. He then stares down the leader, showing that the attack was a complete failure. Seeing him approach, one of the men shouts a warning that he's coming. To protect their chief, the men yell to attack him all at once. In the blink of an eye, his blade moves, striking down his enemies. Advancing relentlessly, he takes down 2 more foes in his path. Without slowing his pace, he stays focused on his true objective. Desperate, the leader realizes there's no stopping him. He asks how many crossbows are loaded, and is told there are 3. With one final plan, he tells his man to listen very carefully. Tossing his crossbow aside, his hand reaches for his hammer. Grabbing the heavy weapon, he readies himself for the coming fight. With a full spin, he swings the hammer with all his might. He stops his advance, planting his feet firmly on the ground. He breaks into a run again, charging like a shadow toward the leader. The leader knows that with no one in the way, his swing won't be fast enough. Seeing the approach, he tenses up, waiting for the attack. Realizing his plan has failed, he throws the crossbow he was holding to the ground. Face to face, they finally stare each other down for the final blow. Yelling at the barbarian, he unleashes a strike with all his strength. The blow smashes into the ground, but he manages to dodge it by a hair's breadth. Hit by the flying debris, he feels the sheer power of the impact on the ground. Shouting to his men, the leader orders them to fire now. At the same time, 2 archers fire their crossbows at him. Realizing their tactic, he braces for the enemy's dirty trick. The leader quickly grabs another crossbow from the ground beside him. He then prepares to fire, taking advantage of the distraction created by his men. He blocks 1 shot, but the leader challenges him to catch the next one. With an arrow in hand, he faces the new threat from the leader. Without hesitation, the leader fires the weapon right at his face. He laughs, saying there's no way he can catch this shot. Tilting his head, he catches the arrow with his mouth. His eyes wide, the leader is shocked that he missed. Appearing behind him, he lands a devastating blow, striking his legs. Feeling the impact, he looks down, unable to believe what just happened. Still in disbelief, one of the men wonders how the arrow didn't hit him. Clenching it between his teeth, he shows off the arrow he caught in midair. Spitting the tip onto the ground, he shows that he broke it with his mouth. Lying on the ground, the leader can't believe he caught the arrow like that. He tells the leader to wait, as he'll finish off the rest and be right back. In the background, the leader hears his men screaming as they're all cut down. After a while, he returns and drives his sword into the dirt. Stopping in front of the enemy, he says it's too late for that. With no way out, the leader begs him to spare his life. He replies that he's not going to kill him, just cut open his stomach for the map. Screaming, The leader says that's not necessary because he memorized the whole thing. Revealing the secret, he explains where the treasure is and how to get it. He then asks why the leader didn't go after the treasure himself. The man explains that the castle was surrounded by hundreds of soldiers. Unconcerned, he asks what troops they are and why they're there. The leader reveals the army belongs to Viscount Adlin, who is searching for a baron. Realizing the situation, he notes that things just got more complicated. He says he's taking the map to see if the story is true. With his sword at the man's neck, he warns that he doesn't trust bandits. He then repeats that if he wants something, he just goes and takes it. With nothing left to do, the leader can only lament his terrible fate. Back at camp, he tosses the recovered map to the merchant to piece together. The merchant asks what happened, and he replies that it came from a stomach. He explains that he took the map from inside the bandit who swallowed it. After putting it together, the merchant asks if the information matches the story. Analyzing the map, he confirms that the story about the castle seems to be real. Thoughtfully, he's intrigued by the title, Demon Baron. The scene changes. In a village, a knight is investigating a strange disturbance. A villager insists that no one has passed through the village in days. A desperate man begs the knight to believe his words. Just then, Yahello appears, overhearing the villagers' conversation. She then questions him, asking if he can swear it in Elga's name. Facing the villagers, she questions the words just spoken. She then asks if they can swear before Elga that they are not lying. Hesitantly, the man confirms the story, but he seems very uncomfortable. Remembering the past, the woman recalls a warning she received from the man. He ordered them never to mention that a demon had appeared there. Continuing the threat, he promised to return and finish them all if they betrayed him. Back in the present, the woman swears she is telling the truth. The knight finds this strange, as the clues indicated the target came this way. Swearing to Elga, the man denies that any mercenary passed through here. She then reveals that she never said the target was a mercenary. At this revelation, the woman covers her mouth, unable to respond. Seeing her reaction, the knight slowly begins to draw her sword. The woman panics, taking a step back from the threat of the blade. Screaming for them not to be harmed, she points towards one of the houses. Suddenly, a sharp scream comes from inside the house, catching her attention. The woman tries to mislead her, saying it's nothing and she should ignore it. Ignoring the pleas, she continues to stare at the house with great suspicion. Then she notices something strange, wondering what that presence was. Inside the house, a young man writhes on the floor, foaming at the mouth. She claims he is possessed by a demon, but his mother denies everything. Paying no mind, the knight walks towards the fallen man. Desperate, the woman tries to stop her, begging her not to hurt him. Reciting a prayer, she raises her hand and begins a purification ritual. Wielding her sword, she shouts that she will consecrate this lamb to the light. Her hand approaches the man's head, releasing an intense power. Witnessing the scene, the villagers feel a sacred and comforting energy in the air. With the ritual complete, the young man faints and his mother cries out his name. She explains that she saved the child from a demon that had been implanted in him. Finally, she guarantees his soul will never again suffer from demons. Relieved and grateful, the woman finally embraces her son, safe. Suddenly, the knight attacks the young man's body on the floor. With her flaming sword, she cuts off the head of the boy she just saved. She then says that a lamb tainted by evil cannot be kept alive. In despair, the mother realizes her son's head has been torn off. Unable to believe the scene, the woman screams in complete despair and horror. The knight comforts her, saying her son will have eternal rest by Elga's side. However, she warns that the heretic who lied will not share the same fate. Pointing her sword, she demands the woman confess everything she knows. She then asks where the barbarian with the evil spirit went. Changing scenes, the two are sitting around a campfire. The merchant shows the supplies, saying they have plenty of food. He laments not having found the high-quality weapons he was looking for. Ignoring the comment, he asks what the man knows about the Lord of Molden. The merchant replies that he thinks he's heard of the so-called Demon Baron. Talking to him, the man says a merchant highly praised the lord of that city. Reflecting, he thinks that this proves nothing, as demons often deceive with false promises. So he decides the only way to get the dwarven weapon is to check for himself. Holding a vial, he wonders if he could get past hundreds of soldiers with just this. With some hesitation, the other man asks if he can pose an important question. Turning his face, he stares at the man, waiting for him to finally speak. The man then asks about the title of Great Warrior of Atala that he used before. Without changing his expression, he simply asks why he wants to know about it. Stammering, the man explains he heard that the Raging Horn of Aegon also uses that title. With a furious look, he listens as he's told that aside from this mercenary, no one else should hold that title. Grabbing the man by the shoulder, he stares at him with great intensity after hearing the revelation. Falling to the ground, the man apologizes, saying he sinned by asking such a thing. He then reflects that being a great warrior of Atala is no ordinary title. As a sacred title, only one who can slay a great demon is worthy of receiving it. After reaching a conclusion, he realizes that there are only two possible explanations for this entire situation. Clenching his fist tightly, he considers that Atala may have chosen another great warrior. He then tells the man to stand up, saying that none of this is his fault. Taking a step forward, he turns around and finally continues on his way. He thinks that either the man is an imposter or he himself has been abandoned. With a determined look, he swears he will end his rival when he finds him. Arriving at Molden Castle, the scene reveals an imposing and well-protected fortress. Guarding the gate, two guards stood in position with their long spears. From the top of the walls, they watched a huge encampment of soldiers just below. Throughout the area, more guards patrolled attentively, ensuring the fortress's security. Hidden in the vegetation, they observed all the soldiers' movements in the camp. Seeing the size of the army, the merchant asks if there are really hundreds of soldiers there. Telling the merchant to hide, Kadim says he'll enter the castle alone. He refuses, explaining he'll use the night to get past the camp and deal with the sentinels. Unexpectedly, the large castle gate begins to open, to everyone's surprise. Confused, the merchant points in astonishment at the opening castle gate. He then asks what is happening and if the Baron intends to declare war. Believing it to be an opportunity, he states that there is no more time to hesitate. Turning to the merchant, he tells the man to hold on to the horse's mane. Gripping his sword, he plants his feet firmly on the ground and starts to run. Carrying the man, he sprints towards the entrance of the large castle. Shouting, he announces that they will enter the castle all at once. Marching in formation, the soldiers position themselves in front of the castle gate. Confused, one of the guards notices a strange movement approaching quickly. Suddenly, a high-speed object flies past them through the middle of the courtyard. Landing in their midst, he begins to strike at all the soldiers. One of the guards fails to react and is hit squarely by the powerful blow. Continuing the attack, he maintains a focused expression as he advances on the others. In a single motion, he strikes several soldiers at once. The guards still standing remain motionless, showing no reaction. He finds it strange that there's no commotion, even with the death of their comrades. Ignoring the reason, he thinks about how he needs to push forward while the gate is still open. After advancing, he finally comes face to face with the last guard in his path. With a single blow, he hits the soldier, stomping on his face. Fallen on the ground, the last guard is defeated, leaving the path completely clear. Taking a deep breath, he recovers after defeating all the soldiers in his way. Looking at the bodies on the ground, he realizes the last one was the leader of the formation. Turning his head, he notices a new person standing right in front of him. With his back to him, the man asks who he is and what he's doing there. Introducing himself as Baron Molden, he again asks about his identity. Questioning the man, he asks if he is the Demon Baron and what he's doing outside. Denying the rumors, the Baron explains that the accusations are false and the situation is complicated. Grabbing the Baron, he says he'll only know the truth by seeing it with his own eyes. Desperate, the Baron yells that he can't go back, as he came there to sacrifice his life. Telling him to shut up, he says he can worry about that much later. Changing scenes, two guards remember when everything started to go wrong. Just then, the Baron appears, saying he brought some water for them. Surprised, the guard asks why he is doing it himself instead of the soldiers. Watching the camp, he says it's hard to stay alert while waiting for an enemy attack. Blaming himself, he says that everyone is suffering because of an incompetent lord. Shouting at the Baron, the guard says the crooks from Adlin are to blame. Hearing the guard's words, the Baron remains silent with his eyes closed. Thanking them for their support, he says he shouldn't make young men like them suffer. Not understanding his words, the guards just look at each other, confused by the situation. In a flashback, he comments to his wife about how the weather is getting warmer. Standing in the doorway, the Baron just watches the woman sitting in a chair. Noticing his arrival, she asks why he has come. He then recalls the tulips she bought and planted last year. Looking out the window, he compliments her aesthetic sense for decorating the castle. She replies that the castle is suffering from famine, so the tulips don't matter. With a sad look, he tells her he saw children eating the bulbs from the ground. Shocked by the revelation, the woman asks if he punished the children. Challenging her words, he says he is to blame for all this suffering. With his back to her, he laments that the provisions have run out because of the siege. Finally, he announces he will die with honor so the enemy has no justification. Desperate, she shouts that this is why they are doing all of this. He explains that the truth doesn't matter. only their profit and justification. With a plan, he says to spread rumors to His Majesty if the enemy doesn't retreat. Entrusting the future to her, he asks that she lead the territory wisely. Then he states that the battle would end with the death of the so-called demon Baron. Back in the present, the guards worry, asking if the Baron is okay. In his thoughts, the Baron wonders who the real barbarian there is. Pointing into the distance, one of the guards shouts in shock for everyone to look. He warns that Adlin's soldiers are finally approaching to attack. On the front lines, the soldiers look exhausted but continue to prepare for battle. Suddenly, one of the enemy soldiers screams and charges uncontrollably. Watching the scene, he stares at the soldiers and the Baron amidst all the chaos. Screaming desperately, he orders them to lock the gate immediately. The great iron gate starts to lower rapidly. Positioned at the front, the soldiers look back, terrified by the situation. Suddenly, all the guards begin to scream in complete despair. Confused, the nobleman watches a soldier, asking what's wrong. Unexpectedly, a hand appears and grabs the gate, stopping it from closing. Holding the gate, he asks one of the guards to hand him a spear. With tremendous force, he squeezes the weapon's shaft until it breaks. Then he prepares to throw what's left of the spear. His throw flies and strikes one of the guards square in the chest. The attack is so powerful it pierces through several other soldiers in line. Shocked by the scene, the nobleman asks what kind of barbarian he is. Standing at the entrance, he simply announces that the next one can come forward. In response, several spears are thrown at him at once. Taking the hits, he advances on the soldiers without stopping. Sensing the fury, a soldier yells that they have no intention of stopping. With that, the great iron gate continues to lower quickly. Surprised, the nobleman asks why the gate stopped halfway down. A soldier replies that the crank won't turn. It must be jammed. Helpless, the nobleman just stares at the situation in despair. Seeing all the commotion, he just clicks his tongue impatiently. Then the nobleman shouts for them to gather the soldiers and find the mechanic. Startled, a guard calls out to his lord and points upward. From under the structure, a hand emerges and grabs the edge of the gate. Pulling with all his might, he begins to force the gate down by himself. Using immense strength, he yells as he moves the iron structure. Seeing the gate move, the soldiers warn that the enemies are approaching. The nobleman then orders them to provide cover and slow their advance. Immediately, the soldiers start throwing spears from the top of the wall. As the soldiers are hit, he tells everyone to get back. With all his strength, he continues to force the gate down. Then, the gate finally closes, hitting the ground with a great impact. Behind him, the enemy soldiers run right into the gate. Turning with a look of contempt, he just stares at the survivors. Saying that should be enough, he orders them to lock the gate now. In disbelief, the nobleman wonders where his monstrous strength comes from. Facing the Baron, he asks if they can have a calm conversation now. The scene changes. A full meal is served on a large table. Seated together, the nobleman says it's been a while since he's had guests. Eating ravenously, his companion asks for another plate of food. He then comments that food must be scarce because of the siege. The Baron replies not to worry, as he cannot dishonor his allies. Questioning the Baron, he asks if he was going to die for honor. The nobleman then confirms that, to a certain extent, the answer is yes. Wanting the full story, he asks what exactly is happening there. Agreeing to explain, the Baron says the land was originally barren. Recalling his past, he was appointed lord and decided to transform the place. For over a decade, he dedicated himself to making everything prosperous, but he reveals that one man's greed changed everything completely. He explains that Viscount Adrin began to spread malicious rumors. Adrin accused him of being a demon baron with a pact. According to the rumor, the land only prospered with demonic help, but no one believed it. Everything changed when the fourth prince fell in love with one of the Viscount's maids. With imperial support, the subjugation of the demon baron finally began. He says that 4 months have already passed, and that's why he would sacrifice himself. Finding it all strange, he questions how the enemy has held out for so long. Stuttering, the baron suggests that perhaps the imperial family is secretly helping. He continues to stare at the baron in silence, clearly suspicious of the story. Changing the subject, the Baron asks him to tell his own story. Revealing his objective, he asks about a fist-shaped rock. Shocked, the nobleman confirms that this rock exists in the castle's basement. He then asks to be taken there, saying he will leave afterward, but the Baron refuses, stating that access to the area is forbidden. With a serious look, he asks what the reason for the prohibition is. The Baron apologizes, saying he cannot reveal that to a stranger. Faced with the refusal, he just continues to stare at the Baron in silence. Startled, the companion comments on how the atmosphere changed so suddenly. In the silence, the two continue to stare at each other tensely. He repeats his refusal, saying the entrance to the basement is forbidden. Sighing, he realizes things were going too well to be true. Suddenly, he draws a dagger, completely changing the mood of the conversation. Seeing the weapon, the Baron stares at him, completely surprised by his action. With a swift motion, he slams the dagger forcefully into the table. The Baron just looks at the embedded dagger, still not understanding the situation. Crushing a bug, he says the 100 soldiers will end up just like it tomorrow. He warns that there is no escape, as the enemies have surrounded the outside. Continuing his threat, he says they will all die in vain, just like the bug. Saying he doesn't need to explain, he states he'll give him a choice. He asks if the Baron will guide him now or wait for the bloodshed. Analyzing the situation, the Baron realizes he isn't bluffing. Admitting his mistake, he regrets letting a stranger into the castle. Finally giving in, the Baron agrees to take him to the castle's basement, but he warns it won't be now, as he has an important condition. Questioning the proposal, he asks what the Baron's condition is. The nobleman reveals he wants help defending the castle from the enemy attack. Promising access to the basement, he says he'll instruct the butler to guide him after the fight. Finding the idea ridiculous, he asks if that is truly an honorable death. Caught by surprise, the Baron is left speechless. He continues, explaining that abandoning everything to die is like running from the fight. Deep in thought, the nobleman reflects on the harsh words he just heard. He says that sacrificing oneself might seem noble, but it's cowardly. Clenching his fist, he claims his people's way is different. Even against a powerful enemy, he says one must fight to the end. For his people, he explains, that is the true meaning of honor. In silence, the Baron just stares at the crushed bug on the table. Seizing the moment, he says he has a new proposal for the Baron. Seeing his reaction, he continues to explain all the details of his plan. Hearing everything, the nobleman seems to consider the new offer. Saying he'll think for a moment, he asks them to wait in their room. A servant then guides them down the hall, asking them to wait there. Arriving at the guest room, they enter and look around. Walking through the room, he tells the merchant to take the bed. After settling in, he places his sword on a piece of furniture. He then positions himself in the center of the room, simply standing and waiting. His companion watches him, stepping back a little with his large luggage. Sitting on the bed, the merchant asks if the Baron will accept the proposal. With his arms crossed, he replies that it's not a bad deal for the Baron. Still worried, the companion comments on the nobleman's sudden change in attitude. He then questions why the Baron was so inflexible about the basement. With a serious look, he simply replies that the reason is quite obvious. Not understanding, the merchant asks what he means by that. At that moment, the bedroom door creaks and begins to move. Standing in the doorway, the Baron stares at him with a very serious expression. Commenting that he returned quickly, he asks if the Baron has decided. Shaking his head, the Baron simply tells him to get ready to leave. Changing scenes, night finally arrives with a full moon in the sky. Outside, the castle entrance remains completely silent and dark. Meanwhile, 2 guards continue to patrol the top of the wall. Suddenly, one of the guards hears a noise and looks to the side. Shouting, the guard demands they identify themselves immediately or they will attack. Saying it's him, the Baron tells the guard named Delton to lower his voice. Surprised, the guard asks what the Baron is doing there at this hour. Telling him to calm down, the Baron reminds the guard that he is in charge here. Confused, the soldier asks for help with the ropes to tie to the pillars. Turning around, the Baron gives the order to never leave the castle. The soldiers then begin to fasten the ropes to a large stake. Holding the end of the rope, he prepares to descend the wall. He descends the wall quickly. Impressed from above, the guards comment on his agile movements. Holding the rope tightly, the Baron also prepares to descend. Telling him to be careful, one of the soldiers bids the Baron farewell. Looking at his men, the Baron begins to call each of them by name. As he continues the roll call, the soldiers listen intently. He then asks them to protect Molten, a treasure more precious than his own life. Completely shocked, the soldiers just react in silence to his words. Having already descended, he watches the Baron reach the ground shortly after. Seeing the Baron arrive, he asks if everything was settled up there. With a serious face, the Baron confirms that he managed to say goodbye to everyone. Drawing his sword, he announces it's time to kill Adrin. Back to their conversation, the Baron asks what he just said. He then explains that the 2 of them will ambush the camp at sunset. Startled, the nobleman asks if the plan isn't just a suicide mission. He retorts, asking if that wasn't what the Baron planned from the start. Caught by surprise, the Baron just stares at him with nothing to say. He says the Baron's real goal was to die anyway. Worried, the Baron asks if Adrin wouldn't retaliate against Molten in the end. Telling him not to worry, he guarantees he will end everything in the ambush. Despite the promise, the Baron continues to stare at him in complete silence. He then says that if they fail, he'll help defend Molten afterward. Hearing the condition, the Baron looks at him with a thoughtful expression. He points out that the Baron has nothing to lose with this proposal. Shifting to the enemy camp, 2 guards are on watch in the darkness. Suddenly, a dagger is thrown towards them at high speed. The blow strikes one of the guards right in the neck, and he falls. Seeing the blow, the other guard turns in shock. shock. He stands still, just staring at the situation without reacting. Moving quickly, he prepares to attack the remaining guard. With a single strike, he hits the soldier's neck dead on. With no chance to defend, the guard falls, defeated by the powerful attack. As the Baron watches, he positions himself at the camp's entrance. He then comments that the guards didn't react to their partner's death. At that moment, he seems to finally understand what's happening there. Analyzing the body, he notices the soldier's gaunt face and thin body. He says the soldiers look like they've been starving for days. Looking around, he realizes the camp is too quiet. He keeps observing, connecting the dots of the strange situation. The Baron just stares at him, waiting for an explanation. With a serious look, he turns and prepares to move on. Calling to the Baron, he says it's time to enter the camp. Entering the camp, they walk silently through the darkness among the tents. Just ahead, a large group of soldiers turns towards them. Surprised, the Baron questions how the soldiers can be awake now. Looking closely, a soldier's face appears very haggard and tired. Then, another soldier slowly turns his gaze towards the two intruders. Suddenly, several soldiers begin to surround them with their swords. He tells the Baron to stay and kill as many as he can while he investigates. Confused, the Baron asks what he plans to look for in the camp. Without hesitating, he replies that he's obviously looking for Viscount Adrin. He explains that the demon's curse must be strongest on the commander. Telling him to fight with all he's got, he encourages him for the coming battle. He then asks if they are the ones who ruined his treasure. He throws two daggers at once. The daggers hit two soldiers. Drawing his weapons, he prepares for the coming battle. With spinning strikes, he hits several enemies at once. Realizing the situation, he says they are just puppets with no will of their own. Meanwhile, the Baron just watches the battle without saying a word. With a precise strike, he hits one of the soldiers in the neck. The attack breaks through the enemy's defense, leaving him unable to react. With no chance to defend himself, the soldier is defeated by the blow. Seeing this, another soldier charges forward, screaming desperately to attack. With a single blow, he manages to defeat the other soldier coming at him. He notices that the deeper he goes, the stronger the soldiers become. Holding his weapon, he realizes what this means for his objective. With this in mind, he walks toward the main tent of the camp. Reaching the entrance, he opens the flap to enter the large tent. Inside, he finally finds Viscount Adrin sitting on his throne. In the room, the soldiers just watch, seeming to be under some kind of control. Sitting on his throne, the Viscount watches with an imposing presence. Suddenly, the soldiers on guard begin to fall to the ground. Another soldier drops to the ground, completely drained of the strength to fight. His face transforming, the Viscount's eyes take on a sinister glow. With a menacing voice, he calls him a wild dog from the wastelands. Seeing the transformation, he just gives a slight smirk. Finding it all interesting, he comments that he's only faced a few like him before. Identifying the enemy, he realizes it's a very rare possessed variant. Asking why he's smiling, the Viscount glares down at him. He then warns him to leave the Baron and his prey alone. Comparing the place to an orchard, he says the harvest is ready. Taking a step forward, he readies himself for the coming fight. With his weapon in hand, he simply says the Viscount talks too much. Seeing the refusal, the Viscount says he seems determined to die there. Just then, a sinister energy erupts behind the Viscount on his throne. Surprised by the sight, he stares at the enemy's display of power. Telling him to say his goodbyes, the Viscount declares he will be the new master of his body. Screaming with fury, he launches his attack to try and possess him. The man just stands still, taking the full impact of the blow without flinching. With wide eyes, he feels the force of the power that struck him. The Viscount explains he will use any opening to dominate his body. But he realizes something is wrong and becomes unsure of the outcome. Unexpectedly, another image appears in his place, resisting the attack. Feeling the attack fail, the Viscount suddenly screams, completely terrified by the situation. Screaming in pain, he says that it can't be, that it makes no sense at all. Furious, he wonders why he can't possess him with his power. Apologizing for the situation, the man just gives a slight smile at the result. He then reveals that this body is already at maximum capacity. Pointing his weapon, he approaches the Viscount, who is still sitting on his throne. The Viscount then reveals he has only ever failed to possess much stronger demons. He says that for a moment, he thought he was a demon in disguise. Baring his teeth, he laments that he's going to lose to a mere human. Warning him not to gloat, his body begins to transform again. Continuing the transformation, his body grows and becomes more and more deformed. Screaming furiously, he warns that he will crush him to nothing as he grabs his weapon. With a focused gaze, he prepares for the attack. Charging forward with its weapon, The creature tries to land a powerful blow. He manages to block the strike with his axe. Even while blocking, he's dragged back by the force of the blow and realizes his axe has been destroyed. Seeing the situation, he clicks his tongue, impatient with the enemy. Then the creature screams and raises its weapon for another strike. Leaping back, he retreats to dodge the creature's attack. With immense force, the creature's blow smashes into the ground. Having missed the strike, the creature turns, looking for its opponent. Far from the enemy, he watches the creature, waiting for its next move. Seeing him retreat, the creature calls him a pathetic wild dog. His weapon now seems too small for such a direct confrontation. Against that weapon, a head-on fight would be impossible to win. Staring at the creature, he thinks of a new attack strategy. Looking towards the camp, he spots Molten Castle in the distance. The creature then asks if he's trying to find a place to run. Suddenly, more soldiers appear and begin to surround him from all sides. It warns that even if he defeats a few, it still has 300 more bodies to use. At that moment, a soldier rushes towards him to strike. Another soldier also charges, trying to land a hit with his weapon. He simply dodges the attacks. With the path clear, he uses his weapon for a powerful counterattack. With a precise strike, he hits the head of the soldier who attacked him. In a spinning motion, he manages to push the other soldiers away. Then the creature lunges forward and tries to strike with its weapon. He barely manages to dodge, feeling the pressure of the blow as it passes by. Leaping back, he narrowly escapes the creature's attack. Warning that there's nowhere to run, the creature glares at him furiously. With a leap, he dodges another blow from the powerful creature. Running across the battlefield, he continues to evade the enemy's attacks. Saying he's good at running away, the creature calls him a rat. He then glances back at the castle right behind him. Asking why he's looking at the castle, the creature calls him useless. Struggling up the castle stairs, a soldier appears on the rampart. He says a human body can never face a demon head-on. The creature warns that he should have brought the Hounds of Elga to kill it. Agreeing with the creature, he admits it would be hard to crush the puppet. Laughing at the confession, the creature calls him a fool for finally realizing. He then asks about the real body of the demon controlling it. Caught by surprise, the creature doesn't understand his question. Shouting, the merchant appears on the rampart to give a signal. He says that even a peddler could deal with its real body. With a furious look, the creature reacts, completely shocked by the revelation. Screaming that it's impossible, the creature turns towards the castle. In the basement, the demon's body is seen with a sword thrust into it. Enraged, the creature screams and calls them bastards. Seeing the enemy's despair, he just cracks a slight victorious smile. Back to their conversation, he reveals that the Baron is hiding a demon in the basement. His companion says he was convinced there was a treasure hidden down there. He explains that the Baron would only deny the request for a very serious reason. Reaching the door, his companion points out that it must be the basement. Then he notices that the passage is locked with a giant padlock. Saying not anymore, he prepares to break the lock by force. With one pull, the padlock and chains break easily. Recalling the instructions, he had told the peddler to stab the demon's body. Startled, his companion questions the mission, saying it's too dangerous for him. He then assures him that it will be easy, as its true body is very weak. Meanwhile, a pool of blood starts to form on the basement floor. Inside, the demon's body is struck squarely by the dagger. Trying to connect, the creature's power can no longer reach its body. The creature then realizes its will isn't reaching its true body. Screaming in pain, the creature feels that its true body has been attacked. Screaming with hatred, the creature calls them bastards for their interference. With a smile on his face, he congratulates the peddler on a job well done. The creature then screams that it will kill him and give him the most agonizing death. Furious, the creature threatens to tear out all his muscles. From above, the guards wonder what kind of monster it is. He then realizes he needs to destroy the host body to defeat it completely. With all its might, the creature lunges forward to strike. Barely dodging, he manages to escape the blow that hits the ground. With his weapon, he spins and tries to land a hit on the creature. His attack hits its arm, but the weapon shatters on impact. Laughing at the situation, the creature asks if he thought that would have any effect. Advancing, he cuts off the creature's arm with a single, precise strike. After the strike, he repositions himself to continue the battle. Holding the severed limb, he glares at the creature. Full of rage, the creature warns that he won't live to see its revenge. With all his might, he shouts, calling for his companion. Confused by the shout, the creature turns and looks toward the castle. From above, his companion answers the call with a shout of his own. Shouting, he announces that the requested item has finally been delivered. With a throw, he hurls the weapon toward the battlefield. The axe flies, spinning through the air at high speed towards him. Worried, the merchant regrets not having thrown it with more force. Telling him not to worry, he says the weapon will prove its worth. The weapon then begins to glow and flies even faster through the air. Just then, the axe changes its trajectory and soars toward towards him. He then extends his hand and manages to catch the axe in midair. Holding the weapon, he prepares for the final battle against the creature. Shocked, his companion says the axe accelerated on its own in the air. Seeing the weapon, the creature seems to recognize what is happening. With a remark about the Baron, he readies the new weapon. He then says it's a shame to leave a masterpiece like that behind. The creature asks if he came to Molten for that weapon. Slamming the weapon on the ground, he prepares for the coming battle. Telling the creature it talks too much, he glares at it seriously. With a shout, he prepares to strike a blow with the weapon. Charging forward, he says he's going to shut the creature's mouth for good. Screaming, the creature says it doesn't care if it's a dwarven weapon. With a swing, it warns that it will smash the weapon to pieces. The two weapons then clash, creating a massive shockwave. The axe's blow shatters the creature's weapon into pieces. Shocked, the creature can't believe its steel weapon was broken. The axe's blow continues and strikes the creature's head with full force. Celebrating, he says he's finally got a top-quality weapon. From above, his companion pulls a rope, preparing to escape. Staring at the creature's body, he observes the aftermath of the battle. The enemy's body then begins to dissolve into a dark energy. He explains that to defeat it, the host of the possession must be killed. Realizing what's left to be done, he prepares for the confrontation. Suddenly, the Baron appears at his side, preparing a surprise attack. Startled, his companion shouts, warning him of the imminent attack. With one step, the Baron lunges and tries to strike with his sword. Turning, he manages to parry the Baron's blow with his own weapon. He then faces the Baron, who cracks a sinister smile. Standing at the castle gate, he calls the Baron by his title. Shrouded in a dark energy, the Baron stands with his back to him. Asking if he thought it was over, the Baron calls him a dog. With a serious look, he faces the Baron, now possessed by the enemy. The Baron stares him down, asking if he thought it was over. With a sinister look, the Baron calls him a wild dog again. He realizes the enemy has already planted its malice within the Baron. The demon explains that the Baron will watch his land be destroyed and his people slaughtered. He says he was just one step away from tasting the sweet fruit of vengeance. He then understands that the demon needed the Baron to survive. The demon then asks if he has the guts to strike the Baron down right there. He's mistaken, he says, staring at the Baron with a serious expression. He then reveals he only brought the Baron along so he could deal with him personally. The demon warns that if he kills the Baron, he will be hunted by the soldiers. He asks if the same wouldn't happen if he let the Baron live. With a serious look, he warns that he'll just kill them all. The demon says it knows he isn't bluffing. With a smile, the demon says the Baron must die by its hands. It explains that this way, it can savor the Baron's agony. Screaming, it declares the Baron will watch the soldiers of Molten die. Staring at the Baron, he watches silently for a moment. He watches the scene, a look of surprise on his face. Hand on his face, the Baron appears to be fighting the possession. Clutching his sword, the Baron continues to resist the demon's control. With great difficulty, he tries to lift his weapon to attack. With a cry, the Baron shouts that the demon will not touch Molten. Furious, the demon wonders how the Baron managed to resist its control. Confused, he just observes the internal struggle taking place. Screaming, the Baron says he will take the demon to hell with him. Just then, the Baron's sword shatters into pieces. With the broken sword, the Baron uses the remaining shard to attack himself. With one blow, he plunges the broken blade into his own chest. The Baron collapses to the ground in a pool of blood. From above, the guards look on, shocked, not understanding what happened. One of the guards screams, asking why his lord would do such a thing. Falling to his knees, the Baron clutches the wound in his chest. The demon wonders how he managed to stab himself even while possessed. As he gasps for breath, the Baron stares at the ground with a serene look. Clutching his axe, he simply watches the scene in complete silence. The vendor asks if his lord is finally dead. With a serious look, he replies that the Baron is not dead yet. He says the Baron is strong for being able to pierce his own armor. The Baron struggles to explain that it would have been impossible without the demon's power. Even at the end, he seems to be struggling to get his last words out. He looks at the Baron, just listening to what he has to say. With difficulty, the Baron tries to pull the blade from his chest. Placing a hand over his, he stops him from removing the blade. His body suddenly feeling lighter, the Baron looks confused. He then realizes that the sword's effect is delaying the Baron's death. He says the Baron didn't give up and chose mutual destruction in the end. With a faint smile, the Baron says he's honored to have him as a companion. He says his final words are only regrets about the past. With a sad look, he says he should have destroyed the demons sooner. He recalls the past. When the demon asked if he wanted to develop Molten, he explains that the demon whispered those words to him deep underground. After some thought, he accepted the deal, not knowing it was a trap. With time, he says he came to love Molten and its people. He reveals that his love for Molten filled him with guilt and anxiety. Clenching his fist, he says he lived in constant dread of the demon. With a pained breath, He laments that this day has finally come. He then realizes that the demon wanted the Baron's pain and despair. He gasps that he had to borrow power. He then asks if it wasn't his own will that drove out the demon. Agreeing, the Baron says he put an end to it with his own strength. With a sad look, he agrees with the noble Baron's words. With his last breath, he asks him to pass on his words to Delpina. He apologizes for not being able to protect her tulip in the end. He asks him to say he's sorry, looking at him one last time. With a final breath, the Baron finally dies. He watches the scene in silence, reflecting on the Baron's death. With bells ringing, Molten Castle prepares for the funeral. The Baron's body is carried in a coffin by his guards. With a serene expression, the Baron is mourned by all his people. A grieving woman watches the ceremony with a sad gaze. The castle's soldiers gather to bid farewell to their lord. Throughout the city, black flags are raised as a sign of mourning. The citizens of Molten gather to pray for their late Baron. Meanwhile, he and his companion watch everything from a balcony. With his arms crossed, he silently watches the funeral from a distance. The Baron's soldiers stare at the defeated creature's body on the ground. One of the guards observes the scene, trying to understand everything that happened. A soldier says only the monster's flesh and body remain. The soldier asks what exactly happened on the battlefield. He says it was a miracle the enemy soldiers even moved. A soldier then questions if all of that was really the work of a demon. A soldier says that the only one who knows the truth is keeping his mouth shut. With a suspicious look, he stares at the man in front of him. Shouting, the guards demand that he tell the truth about what happened. Taking a step, he turns and prepares to leave the castle. He says the Baron fought the enemy until his last breath. Hearing his words, the guards just stare at him in complete silence. Carrying his companion, he shouts and orders them to open the gates. He says the Baron deserves to rest in the embrace of his treasure. With his eyes closed, the captain seems to reflect on the words spoken. A guard remembers that the Baron loved Molten more than anything. Looking at the castle, he says they will protect Molten from now on. The captain then remembers the most precious treasure the Baron mentioned. Closing his eyes, the soldier seems to finally understand the last words. The captain orders them to clear the area for the Lord's farewell. Outside, he and his group watch the Baroness from a distance. Thanking the mercenary, the Baroness says they are in his debt. On behalf of her husband, she thanks him from the bottom of her heart. Saying it's not necessary, he looks at her with a serious expression on his face. He then says he has already received payment from the Baron with the weapon. With a sad look, the Baroness just stares at him in silence. She says she also prepared gold coins and food for him. Refusing the offer, he tells her she can keep the supplies. He then reveals there's a bandit hideout with more food. Asking her to distribute it to the people, he informs her that he has already taken care of the bandits. Saying they will never forget, she says he has put them even further in his debt. She declares that his benefactors and enemies are now Molten's as well. With a smile, she says they will receive him with the utmost respect. Saying he can't promise anything, he turns to leave the castle. Taking a step, he prepares to leave Molten Castle. Turning back, he asks if her name is Delpina, just to confirm. Surprised, the Baroness asks how he knows her name. He then reveals that the Baron left a message for her. He says the Baron couldn't protect the tulips, and that he apologizes. Remembering the past, the Baron is shown tending to a tulip garden. With a tear in her eye, the Baroness is moved by her husband's last message. He says the Baron had an honorable death as the Lord of Molten. Telling her to be proud, he turns and leaves the castle. Leaving Molten, Kadim and the vendor walk through the forest. Shouting, Kadim tells him to shut up about the demon. With a serious look, he once again tells his companion to stop. He then asks if his companion brought what he asked for. He explains that demon blood grants immunity to mental attacks, but he says it's useless against the insanity penalty. Opening the bottle, he says he will look for a solution to the insanity. With the axe, he says his dependence on demon blood will decrease. He says he's never seen a weapon of that caliber in his first playthrough. If the weapon was made in the Dwarven Kingdom, it must be unique grade. He then wonders why a treasure like that was hidden there. Shouting, the companion says there was a white symbol on the chest. Noticing the new clue, he says he can't go back to Molten now. He says he left a trail of blood and will soon be found. He reveals that the real problem is the high-ranking knights. Remembering the past, the Holy Archknight appears on a mountain of bodies. With a smile, he seems to remember the battle with a certain bitterness. He bitterly remembers those who hunted him in the past. Elsewhere, a long-haired knight stares at his back. Complaining about the delay, Helia asks how much longer he will make her wait. Apologizing, the knight calls her Lady Helia and bows to her. With a look of contempt, she just watches him in silence for a moment. She then informs him they are almost at the city of Molden. Shouting, the vendor warns him they can't go that way. He says if they keep going, they'll run right into the guard post. Pointing to the side, He suggests they take an alternate trail. Kadim says he sped up without realizing, lost in his memories. Agreeing with the plan, he and his companion change direction. Remembering everything, the vendor just stares at him in silence. With a shout, he calls out to his companion to break the silence. Startled, he turns and faces the man with a fearful look. Stammering, he says it's nothing and turns away. With a serious look, Kadim just stares at him without a word. Clearing the way, he uses his axe to cut through the branches on the trail. With a sad look, the vendor just keeps walking. At high speed, a knight gallops toward the city of Molden. The horse's hooves pound the ground, kicking up dust along the road. With a cry, the female knight tries to calm her horse as they arrive. With a serene look, she prepares to continue her journey. Riding beside her, the knight Eden looks exhausted. With his tired horse, the knight can't keep up the pace. Complaining, she says they're not making progress and tells him to speed up. He replies that it's impossible for an ordinary horse to run any faster. Her mount is a divine steed, capable of running for days. He then asks if they're going to stop in Molden to look for information. She says the imperial family recommended they not interfere in that territory. With a serious look, she reminds him of his duty as a knight. Annoyed, he says a knight's duty is to protect the innocent. Saying that won't work, she seems to change her mind. She says she'll hunt the demon alone and tells him to follow. Shouting, she spurs her horse and rides off ahead of the knight. With her radiant horse, she disappears down the road in an instant. Annoyed, the knight calls her a madwoman and laments having to follow her. Taking a deep breath, he seems to be trying to calm down after the argument. Asking for forgiveness, he apologizes for unintentionally using profane words. He then wonders why it's so unfair to him in the end. Saying it's all Elga's will, he tries to come to terms with it. Dismounting his horse, he prepares to investigate the trail ahead. He says that God's will is deeper than the abyss. Suddenly he stops, looking like he's found something on the road. Crouching on the ground, he says those are the demon's tracks. He realizes the direction of the tracks suddenly changed right there. Entering the trail, he and his horse follow the tracks through the woods. He then notices there are branches and vines scattered along the path. The branches were cut cleanly, indicating a recent passage. With a serious look, he seems to have a plan in mind. Tying up his horse, he prepares to follow the trail on foot. Drawing his sword, he readies himself for what he might find ahead. With his sword in hand, he advances down the trail into the dark forest. He presses on, determined to find what he's looking for. Taking a deep breath, he's growing tired from walking through the dense forest. He says the forest is getting denser and seems endless. Annoyed, he wonders how the demon knew about this secret trail. Suddenly, he hears a voice and spins around, startled. He says both paths will meet up so they can go. He prepares to continue, but stops when he sees someone in front of him. Surprised, the knight realizes he's finally found who he was looking for. He says the man looks exactly as the holy relic showed. He realizes the man is the one who shattered the holy relic. Drawing his sword, he wonders if he can subdue him alone. He says he's done his part by finding the demon he was after. With a smile, he says the game of hide and seek is over. Suddenly, a branch hits his shoulder. Hearing the sound, he turns to see what it was. He wonders if the man heard the sound of the branch breaking. With his axe, he charges forward to attack the knight with all his might. Turning, the knight braces for the incoming blow. The axe flies at high speed toward the knight on the trail. The axe strikes the shield dead on, creating a massive impact. The force of the blow drags the knight backward on the trail. Shocked, he can't believe his blessed weapon was damaged. Suddenly, he realizes his enemy is no longer in front of him. Leaping, Kadim appears above the knight to strike. With a furious look, he calls him a bastard and lunges for the attack. Running through the forest, Kadim finally finds the knight he was looking for. With his weapon in hand, he lunges forward to deliver a powerful blow, but the knight manages to block the attack with his blade right in front of him. He then yells that he'll aim right for the slit in his helmet. After backing away, he readies his body for another precise attack. He then lands a full-force blow on his opponent's shield. Thrown backward, the knight falls to the ground with his shield in front of him. He complains that the protection is gone, making the shield much heavier. Seeing his rival on the ground, he prepares for the finishing blow. The knight quickly drops the shield, freeing himself of the weight. Without missing a beat, he follows up with his next attack. Narrowly dodging, the knight escapes the attack that hits the ground. He wonders what kind of monstrous strength this is, and what kind of weapon that is. Looking at the discarded shield, he notes his opponent got lucky. He then asks if the knight followed him all the way here on purpose. In silence, the knight just stares at him intently without saying a word. Commenting on the knight being alone, he rests his weapon on the ground. He then says it won't be hard to silence him for good. Surprised by the threat, the knight goes on full alert. Taking a step back, he prepares for the imminent combat. Then, the knight draws his sword and gets ready to fight. Seeing his opponent's weapon, he looks at him with surprise. Raising his sword, he prays for strength to face this wicked demon. Without hesitation, he throws his spinning weapon toward his opponent, but the knight dodges the blow. He then yells at the vendor, telling him to grab his weapon. He complains that he didn't receive the blessing because he was interrupted. Seizing the opportunity, he charges toward the knight. Getting close, he prepares to deliver the final blow. Saying he's already here, the knight faces the blade near his helmet. He then attacks, and the knight defends, creating a powerful impact between them. Realizing the force, he says he would have been knocked out if the blow had landed. Giving no quarter, he presses forward, delivering another blow in sequence. Trying to regain his composure, the knight is almost hit. At that moment, his blow is blocked by the opponent's armor. He thinks that his stance was broken, and his opponent is very experienced. With great intensity, he prepares for the next attack. With each block, he says his wrists feel like they're going to break. He even remarks that it feels like fighting a monster disguised as a human. Then the two blades clash again with impressive force. Parrying the blow, he manages to deflect the blade with his own hand. Immediately after, he grabs the knight's wrist with great force. With a serious look, he stares him down, neutralizing his enemy. Delivering a strike, he pierces the side of his opponent's armor. With the blade in hand, he twists it to finish the attack. The weapon pierces through the protection, causing a serious wound to his rival. Feeling the wound, the knight lets out a cry of pain from under his helmet. Withdrawing the blade, he slashes his shoulder. From the impact, the knight's sword falls to the ground near his feet. Clutching the wound, the knight breathes with great difficulty after the attack. He says the knight is worse than the boy with the spear. The knight then says he can no longer fight with his injured arm. In that case, he picks up the sword that was on the ground. Throwing the weapon, he hurls it toward his opponent. Narrowly dodging, he watches the sword fly right past him. Meanwhile, the vendor arrives, asking if the knight managed to escape. Then Kadim picks up his axe again. Facing his opponent, he stands in silence with the vendor behind him. Fleeing through the forest, the knight runs as fast as he can. Stopping to catch his breath, he struggles to remove his helmet. He then throws the helm far away to lighten his load. Leaving the pieces behind, he continues to shed his armor. He says he needs to reach the horse to warn the holy knight. Struck from behind, he takes a heavy, unexpected blow. The impact of the attack throws him against the trees. Now, sitting on the ground, he stares at the weapon lying in front of him. Picking up his weapon, he warns him that he'd better answer his questions. He then asks if other holy knights came with him. The knight replies that he has nothing to say and tells him to just kill him. With a serious look, he raises his weapon for the final blow. Without a second's hesitation, he brings his weapon down with full force. Taking the hit, the knight feels the direct impact of the attack. Asking why he should kill him, he continues to hold the knight down. With a serious look, he says that keeping him alive will be much more painful. Right after, he swings his weapon again with great force. Pinning the knight, he asks once more if there are others with him. The merchant remarks that they are being tracked, thinking the situation is an overreaction. Even wounded, the knight remains silent, not answering the question. With a great effort, he bites down hard on his own tongue. Noticing the action, he looks at the knight with some surprise. With this act, a piece of the knight's tongue falls to the ground. Startled, the merchant shouts that the knight bit off his own tongue. Unable to speak, the knight just glares at him, his face wounded. He then says this is useless resistance on the knight's part. Grabbing his face, he explains that the interrogation will be done with blinks. Raising his weapon, he threatens to strike his shoulder if there's no answer. To finish, he tells the knight to think carefully if he wants the pain to end. He begins to interrogate the knight, asking about other holy knights. Continuing the questions, he wants to know if the archbishop was also involved. Getting no more answers, he delivers a final, decisive blow. With his weapon, he finishes the knight once and for all. The knight then closes his eyes, finally meeting his end. He observes the body, noticing the expression on his opponent's face. After pulling out the weapon, he says he got important information from that. Staring at the defeated knight, he warns that there's no more time to waste. He then turns and pulls the merchant, who is terrified. The merchant asks why they're in such a hurry all of a sudden. He also questions if what they did to the knight wasn't overkill. Stopping his walk, he falls silent for a brief moment. He then says the knight wasn't following them for some grave sin. Turning back, he asks if the merchant has ever had his tongue ripped out. Speechless, the merchant can only ask what he means. He asks if the merchant has ever been burned alive or left to die on the ground. Shocked by the questions, the man just listens without a word. Going back to the past, he recounts meeting a holy knight with his comrades. Then he reveals that a holy knight is tracking them right now. After hearing the story, the merchant falls silent and lowers his head. Fixing his gaze on the merchant, he tells the man to listen carefully. He then warns that, given his nature, he won't tolerate any interference out of mercy. In this world full of evil, he states he won't hesitate to achieve his goal. With a serious look, he finishes by saying he has always been and always will be this way. With his legs shaking, The merchant stammers as he tries to ask a question. Worried about his fate, he asks if he could end up like that at any moment. He continues, asking if he'll be discarded if he becomes useless. Desperate, he begs for an answer, wanting to know what he needs to do. Next, he asks how he can be respected enough to receive his blood. Staring at the merchant, Kadim watches him intently without saying a word. Approaching the merchant, he warns him that if he doesn't want to die, he'll have to prove his life's worth. Watching him walk away, the merchant stands still,